When she accepted a job in a luxurious mansion, the new maid believed she had found the only chance to save her family. But nights filled with whispers, furtive footsteps, and forbidden doors awakened in her an increasingly unsettling suspicion. Until, upon climbing to the hidden attic, she found 4 quadruplets chained in absolute silence. And what she decided to do after this shock revealed a courage so unexpected that it changed everyone's destiny. Amelia stared at the yellow envelope with red letters that screamed her shame to any passing neighbor. 3rd eviction notice. Her hands trembled as she held the paper, sitting on the steps of the small 3-story building in Croydon. The March sun beat down without mercy, but it wasn't the heat that made her body break into a cold sweat. Inside the 2-room flat, her mother was resting on the sofa that had also served as Amelia's bed for the past 5 months. Eleanor was only 52, but she looked 70. The aggressive pancreatic cancer had transformed the once strong and vibrant woman into a fragile shadow. The hair that was once thick and black now fell out in clumps on the pillow. Her sunken eyes had lost the sparkle Amelia had always known. Amelia was 28 and felt like she was carrying the weight of a lifetime on her shoulders. She worked as a cashier at a pharmacy in central Croydon, where she spent 10 hours a day on her feet, dealing with impatient customers for a salary that barely paid the electricity bill, £1,200 a month. Eleanor's medical expenses reached £4,000 a month, not counting food, rent, and basic utilities. The math simply didn't add up. She had sold everything of value. The flat-screen television she had so proudly bought in 12 installments, the laptop she used for online courses, the jewelry she had inherited from her grandmother, the good smartphone she had swapped for a basic model. There was nothing left to sell, except perhaps her own dignity, and some days Amelia wondered if she wasn't selling that too, piece by piece, every time she begged the landlord for another extension, every time she borrowed money from acquaintances who now looked away when they saw her on the street. She climbed the stairs slowly, each step feeling like a mountain. She opened the door carefully so as not to make a noise. Eleanor was finally asleep. The nights were the worst, when the pain became unbearable and her moans filled the small space. Amelia had learned to sleep in short intervals, always alert, always ready to get up and hold her mother's hand, to whisper words of comfort that sounded empty even to her own ears. She sat on the plastic chair next to the sofa and watched Eleanor breathe. Each breath seemed a tremendous effort. The treatment they were getting through the National Health Service was insufficient. The endless queues, the missing medications, the scans that took months to schedule. Amelia knew her mother needed more. Treatments that only private clinics offered, imported drugs that cost a fortune. But how could she afford that on a minimum wage salary? She picked up her old phone and opened the job app for the 10th time that day. She had already applied for everything that appeared: receptionist, supermarket cashier, cleaning assistant, nanny, caregiver. Some didn't even reply. Others said she didn't have enough experience, or that the position had already been filled. The truth was, nobody wanted to hire a visibly exhausted woman with dark circles under her eyes and clothes. That had seen better days. That's when she saw the ad. Simple, direct, no beating around the bush. Live-in housekeeper wanted for a high-end residence in the Wentworth estate. Responsibilities: general cleaning, organizing, meal preparation. Salary: £3,600 per month, immediate start. Interested parties, please send a message to the number below. Amelia read it 3 times to make sure she wasn't mistaken. £3,600, 3 times what she was earning now. It would be enough to cover the back rent, buy the medicine Eleanor needed, maybe even pay for a few private chemotherapy sessions. Her hands trembled again, but this time it wasn't from despair. It was a tiny spark of hope, dangerous and tempting. Without much thought, she typed a message. Good afternoon. I saw the ad for the housekeeper position. I am 28 years old, have experience in cleaning and organizing, and am available immediately. I would like more information about the job. She sent it before she could regret it. The phone was silent for 15 minutes that felt like hours. Amelia got up, went to the tiny kitchen, and made some tea for Eleanor. She was putting the water on to boil when the phone vibrated. The reply was brief, almost cold. Interview tomorrow at 10 a.m. Address 847 Acacia Avenue, Wentworth Estate. Be punctual. Dress appropriately." Amelia felt a shiver down her spine. Something about the message was strange, too impersonal. But need spoke louder than intuition. She replied, confirming her attendance, and stared at the phone screen for a long time. That night, after giving Eleanor her medicine and helping her bathe, Amelia lay awake thinking. Wentworth Estate was an exclusive area, known for its luxurious mansions and gated communities where business moguls, celebrities, and politicians lived. She had never set foot there. She knew there was a chasm between her world and that one, a chasm made of money, opportunities, and doors that never opened for people like her. But tomorrow, one of those doors might open. Even if it was just a crack, even if it was just for her to enter through the back door as an employee, as someone who didn't belong to that world but was tolerated for being useful. Amelia had no pride to preserve at that moment. She had a dying mother and bills to pay. She got up early, the next day before the sun rose. She took a cold shower because the electric heater had been broken for weeks. She put on the only outfit she had that still looked decent, a pair of black trousers and a white button-down blouse she used for job interviews. It was wrinkled, but she used a cold iron, pressing hard to smooth out the creases. Eleanor woke up as Amelia was getting ready. "Where are you going, my dear?" Her voice was weak, hoarse from medication and pain. "I have a job interview, Mum. It could be a good opportunity." Amelia forced a smile, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "In the Wentworth Estate." Eleanor had seen the address written on the paper on the table. "Yes, a big house. They need someone for cleaning and organizing. The salary is good, Mum. Much better than what I make at the pharmacy." Eleanor tried to sit up but didn't have the strength. Amelia rushed to help her, arranging the pillows behind her back. "My dear, are you sure? These big houses sometimes, the people who live in them can be complicated." "Mum, I have to try. We can't go on like this. The eviction, the medicine, everything. I have to do something." Eleanor held her daughter's hand with what little strength she had. Her fingers were thin as twigs, her translucent skin showing the bluish veins. "I know, sweetheart. Just be careful. Pay attention to people, to what they say and what they don't say. You've always been clever. Use that intelligence." Amelia kissed her mother's forehead. "I'll be back soon. There's food in the fridge for lunch. If you need anything, call me." The bus journey to the Wentworth Estate took almost 2 hours. 3 different buses packed with people going to work. Amelia stood for most of the way, holding on tightly to the handrail as the bus rattled over the potholed streets. She watched through the window as the landscape gradually changed. The simple, cramped houses of Croydon gave way to office buildings, then to ever larger housing estates until they finally reached the Wentworth Estate. It was another world. The streets were clean, tree-lined. The cars that passed were new, imported, gleaming. The people on the pavements wore designer clothes, talking on their phones with that air of importance of those with relevant appointments and money in the bank. Amelia felt out of place, an intruder in a territory that was not her own. She got off on Acacia Avenue and walked, looking for number 847. The mansions along the street were impressive. Immense gardens, high fences, security cameras on every corner. When she finally found the address, she stopped on the pavement and just stared. The house was modern, all glass and exposed concrete. 3 stories, enormous windows, an impeccable garden with exotic plants Amelia had never seen before. A high wall surrounded the property, with a wrought iron gate that must have cost more than she hired. Earned in a year. There were cameras pointed in every direction. Amelia took a deep breath and pressed the intercom. A female voice answered almost immediately. "Yes? Good morning. My name is Amelia Shaw. I have an interview scheduled for 10 o'clock. There was a brief silence, then the sound of a lock being released. The gate opened silently. "Come in. Follow the stone path to the main door." Amelia walked through the gate, and it closed behind her with a definitive click. She walked slowly through the garden, her old shoes making noise on the perfectly aligned cobblestones. Everything. Here screamed wealth, power, a life she only knew from television. The main door opened before she could ring the bell. A woman of about 40 was standing there, elegant in a beige linen dress, her blonde hair tied in a flawless bun, her makeup discreet but expensive. Her eyes were blue and as cold as ice. "Amelia?" The woman scanned her from head to toe in a single appraising glance. "Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon. Come in." The woman turned without waiting for a reply, and Amelia followed her inside. The interior of the house was even more impressive than the exterior. Marble floors, a soaring ceiling, modern art on the walls. Everything was white, grey, black, minimalist, cold, almost sterile. There were no photographs, no toys, nothing to indicate that people actually lived there. It looked more like an art gallery than a home. The woman led her to a room with a glass table and 2 chairs. "Sit down." Amelia obeyed. The woman sat on the other side of the table and folded her hands on the glass top. She didn't offer water, didn't smile, didn't try to make Amelia more comfortable. "My name is Victoria Sterling. This is my house. I'll be direct because I don't like to waste time. We need someone to take care of the cleaning, organizing, and meal preparation. The job is from Monday to Saturday, 8 in the morning to 6 in the evening. You would live here during the week and have Sundays off. The salary is £3,600 a month. Do you have any questions?" Amelia was surprised by the speed of the introduction. Yes. What exactly would my responsibilities be? And living here, would I have my own room? Cleaning of all permitted rooms, preparation of 3 daily meals, shopping when necessary. Yes, there is a room on the ground floor for the staff. Any other questions? Do you and the master of the house have children? Would there be any childcare involved? Victoria froze for a second, something crossing her face like a shadow. "No, there are no children in this house. Any more questions?" "No, ma'am." "Good. I need you to understand a few things very clearly before we proceed. First, absolute discretion. What happens in this house, what you see, hear, or discover, stays within these walls. You never speak about anything with anyone from the outside. Second, there are parts of the house that are private and will be locked. You are not permitted to enter those rooms under any circumstances. Third, we value our privacy. You will do your work efficiently and discreetly, without asking unnecessary questions. Is that clear? Amelia felt a discomfort grow in her stomach. The rules were strange. The way Victoria spoke was threatening. But £3,600. Eleanor, the eviction, the medicine. Yes, ma'am. It's clear. Excellent. You start tomorrow. Bring your things and be here at 8 in the morning sharp. Don't be late. Victoria stood up, indicating that the interview was over. Amelia stood up too, her head spinning with the speed of it all. Thank you very much for the opportunity, ma'am. I won't disappoint you. Victoria didn't reply. She just led her to the door and watched her leave through the garden, her cold eyes following Amelia's every step until she passed through the gate. Amelia walked to the bus stop as if in a dream. She had gotten the job, the salary that would save her mother, pay off the debts, give her a break. But why didn't she feel relieved? Why this tightness in her chest, this feeling that she had just signed a contract whose fine print she hadn't been able to read? On the bus back, looking out the window as the Wentworth estate faded behind her and the council estates reappeared, Amelia thought of Eleanor's words. Pay attention to what they say and what they don't say. Victoria had said there were no children in the house, but why had that question provoked such a strange reaction? Why would a rich couple living in a huge mansion need so much secrecy? Why locked doors in such a large house? Amelia shook her head, trying to push the thoughts away. She was being paranoid. Rich people were eccentric, everyone knew that. They probably just wanted privacy, nothing more. She would work, earn her salary, take care of her mother. It was as simple as that. But that night, lying on the sofa while Eleanor slept in the bedroom, Amelia had a strange dream. She dreamt of a large, silent house with corridors that never ended, with locked doors that whispered her name. And at the end of the longest corridor, behind the heaviest door, something was waiting. Something small and scared. Something that needed to be found. She woke up sweating, her heart racing. She looked at the clock. 3 in the morning, the time when the world seems darkest, most threatening, most full of bad possibilities. She got up, had a glass of water, tried to calm her nerves. In a few hours, she would be starting a new job, a new life. Just that. Nothing strange, no mysterious doors, no disturbing dreams. But as she returned to the sofa, she couldn't help but look out the window at the sleeping city outside and wonder what kind of situation she had just gotten herself into. Amelia woke at 5 in the morning on her last day sleeping on the living room sofa. She had packed a small suitcase with her few clothes, toiletries, and a photo of Eleanor she always carried with her. She looked around the tiny flat that had been her home for so long and felt a pang of sadness mixed with relief. Eleanor was already awake when Amelia entered the bedroom. For the past few months, her mother had been sleeping less and less, the pain no longer allowing for more than a few hours of fragmented rest. She was sitting up in bed, propped up by pillows, her face paler than usual. "So today's the day," Eleanor said, her voice weak but trying to sound cheerful. Amelia sat on the edge of the bed and took her mother's hand. "It is, Mum, but don't worry, I'll come to see you every Sunday. And now we'll have money for your medicine, to pay the rent. Everything's going to be okay." "I know it will, my dear. You've always been strong, always looked after me. Now it's my turn to get well, so you don't have to worry so much." The two hugged, and Amelia had to swallow her tears. She couldn't cry now. She needed to be strong, needed to make this work. She left Eleanor with the upstairs neighbor, Mrs. Gable, a retired lady who had offered to look after her mother during the week in exchange for a small sum. It was an extra expense, but a necessary one. Amelia couldn't leave Eleanor alone. The journey to the Wentworth estate on Monday morning felt different. Now it wasn't just a visit, it was her new workplace, her new temporary home. Amelia looked out the bus window and tried to convince herself she had made the right choice. She arrived at the mansion's gate at exactly 8 o'clock. The intercom was answered by the same female voice as before, but this time without a question. The gate simply opened. Amelia entered, pulling her old-wheeled suitcase along the stone path. The door opened before she could ring the bell. Victoria was there, dressed impeccably in black tailored trousers and a white silk blouse. Her face showed no expression. "Punctual, good, come in." Amelia entered, and Victoria closed the door behind her. "Leave the suitcase here. I will show you the house and your duties. Pay attention because I will not repeat myself." They started on the ground floor. A huge living room with white sofas and a marble fireplace that looked like it had never been used. The kitchen was the size of Amelia's entire flat, fully equipped with state-of-the-art appliances, all gleaming stainless steel. There was a pantry that looked more like a small supermarket. "You will prepare breakfast at 7:30. Nothing too elaborate. Fruit, bread, coffee, juice. Lunch should be ready at noon. We will dine at 8 in the evening. The meals should be healthy, well presented. There is a notebook in the kitchen with our preferences and dietary restrictions." Amelia mentally noted every piece of information. Victoria spoke quickly, without pausing, without checking if she was keeping up. They moved to the first floor, 4 bedrooms, all locked except one. "This is our room," Victoria said, opening the door briefly for Amelia to see. It was enormous, minimalist like the rest of the house, with a king-size bed and floor-to-ceiling windows. "You will clean here every Tuesday and Friday, change the bed linen, vacuum, dust. Never touch anything in the drawers or wardrobes." The other 3 bedrooms remained locked. Amelia looked at the heavy, dark wood doors, each with a sophisticated digital lock. "And these rooms? They are private. You don't need to worry about them." Victoria's voice was sharp, final. They went up to the 2nd floor. There was an office with shelves full of books and a huge mahogany desk. "Here you will only dust once a week. Do not touch anything on the desk. Nothing." At the end of the 2nd floor corridor was a door different from the others, smaller, made of metal, also with a digital lock. It had a more industrial look, clashing with the elegant decor of the rest of the house. "And that door?" Victoria turned so quickly that Amelia took a step back. Her blue eyes were icy. "That door is never to be opened, or touched or questioned, do you understand?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good. Now I'll show you your room." They went back down to the ground floor, and Victoria led her down a side corridor Amelia hadn't noticed before. At the end was a simple wooden door. Victoria opened it and motioned for Amelia to enter. The room was small but clean. A single bed, a wardrobe, a bedside table, a small window overlooking the side garden. There was a tiny ensuite bathroom. It was basically a comfortable cell. This is your space. Keep it clean and organized. You will have a 1-hour lunch break and can rest here during that time. At 6 in the evening, after serving dinner and cleaning the kitchen, you are free until 7:30 the next morning. On Sundays, you can leave after breakfast and must return on Saturday evening. Any questions? No, ma'am. Good. Start with the kitchen. Prepare. Lunch, grilled chicken, salad, brown rice. Simple. My husband and I will have lunch at noon sharp. Victoria left without another word. Amelia stood there for a moment, processing everything. The house was beautiful, but there was something deeply wrong with it. The silence was oppressive. There was no sound of television, music, or life. It was like being inside a museum after closing time. She took a deep breath and went to the kitchen. She had work to do. She opened the huge refrigerator and found everything organized with military precision, every item in its place, labeled, dated. She took out the chicken, the vegetables for the salad, the rice. As she cooked, Amelia tried to process the strangeness of it all, the locked doors, the absolute ban on asking questions, the sepulchral silence, Victoria's coldness, and that metal door on the second floor, so different from the others, so out of place. At noon sharp, she had everything ready. She had set the table in the formal dining room with the fine china plates she found in the cupboard, silver cutlery, linen napkins. Everything was impeccable, just as she imagined Victoria would expect. Victoria appeared punctually, accompanied by a tall, thin man who must have been about 45. He wore a dark suit even at home, had greying hair combed back, and brown eyes that seemed to assess Amelia with the same coldness as his wife. "This is my husband, Dr. Arthur Sterling," Victoria said. "Arthur, this is Amelia, our new employee." "A pleasure," the man said, his voice deep and controlled. He didn't offer his hand, didn't smile. He simply sat down at the table. Amelia served lunch and stood by the sideboard, like the maids she saw in period films. Victoria and Arthur ate in almost absolute silence. They didn't talk to each other, didn't comment on the food, didn't make any sound other than the inevitable clinking of cutlery against plates. It was unsettling. Amelia had worked in a few houses cleaning on weekends to earn extra money. In the other houses there was always conversation, laughter, a TV on, some sign of normal human life. Here, it was like watching two statues simulating a meal. After they finished, Victoria nodded, and Amelia collected the plates. In the kitchen, as she washed the dishes, she looked out the window and saw Arthur leaving in a car, a gleaming black Mercedes, which probably cost more than she would earn in her entire life. The rest of the day passed in a strange routine. Amelia cleaned, organized, prepared dinner. Victoria appeared occasionally to inspect her work, always finding something that could be better. A corner that wasn't perfectly clean, a cushion not perfectly aligned, a plate that had an almost invisible smudge. At 8 in the evening, she served dinner. This time, Arthur was not present. Victoria dined alone in the same disturbing silence, reading something on a tablet. When she finished, she stood up without a word and went upstairs. Amelia cleaned the kitchen, put everything back in its specific place, checked 3 times to make sure everything was impeccable. It was almost 10 at night when she could finally go to her room. She lay on the narrow bed and stared at the ceiling. The room was quiet, but not in a comfortable way. It was the kind of silence that feels alive, that buzzes in your ears, that makes every small sound seem amplified. She picked up her phone and messaged Mrs. Gable, asking about her mother. The reply came quickly. "She's fine. Ate her dinner well, took her medicine, sleep well." But Amelia couldn't sleep well. There was something in the house that made her tense, alert. It wasn't just the coldness of her employers or the strict rules. It was something deeper, more visceral. The house seemed to be hiding secrets in every locked room, in every silent corridor, in every icy glance from Victoria. At 2 in the morning, she was still awake when she heard footsteps in the corridor. Slow, deliberate steps that stopped occasionally. Amelia lay motionless in bed, holding her breath. The footsteps past her door continued down. The corridor then fell silent. She waited 15 minutes before carefully getting out of bed. She went to the door and opened it just a crack, peeking into the corridor. It was empty, dark, silent, but she was sure she had heard footsteps. She was sure someone was walking around the house in the middle of the night. She closed the door slowly and went back to bed. Sleep didn't come. Amelia lay there, eyes open in the dark, listening to the oppressive silence of the mansion, wondering what exactly happened in that house after the lights went out. When the alarm clock rang at 6 in the morning, she felt exhausted. She got up, took a quick shower and put on the simple uniform of black trousers and a white blouse that Victoria had left for her. She looked at herself in the mirror and almost didn't recognize the woman she saw. Deep dark circles, a pale face, anxious eyes. "It's just a job," she whispered to her reflection. "It's just a job. You can do this." But as she left her room and started another day in that strange, silent house, Amelia couldn't shake the feeling that she had walked into something much bigger and much more dangerous than a simple domestic job. The second day began just like the first. Amelia prepared breakfast punctually at 7:30, arranging everything on the table with the care of someone who knows they are being watched and judged. Victoria appeared exactly on time, impeccable as always, and ate in silence while browsing a tablet. Arthur didn't even show up for breakfast. He had left early, according to Victoria's emotionless report. After breakfast, Victoria handed Amelia a detailed list of tasks for the day. It was handwritten in perfect calligraphy and included specific times for each activity. Amelia read it while Victoria watched her. "Do you have any questions about the tasks?" Her voice was sharp, impatient. "No, ma'am. Everything is clear." "Excellent. I expect everything to be finished by 5 in the afternoon. I will be working in my office and do not wish to be disturbed unless it is absolutely necessary." Victoria went upstairs, and Amelia heard a door close on the second floor. She was alone on the ground floor for the first time during the day. The house seemed even more silent and oppressive without the presence of her employers. It was like being in a museum after hours, surrounded by expensive objects but without life, without a soul. She started with the kitchen tasks. She cleaned every surface until it shone, organized the pantry following the meticulous system Victoria demanded, checked the refrigerator, and made a shopping list as instructed. It was almost 11 o'clock when she finished and moved on to the living room. As she vacuumed the immense rug, Amelia couldn't stop thinking about the sounds she had heard on the first night. The footsteps, the whispers, that feeling that something was wrong in the house. During the day, under the sunlight streaming through the huge windows, it was easy to tell herself she had imagined it all, that she was just stressed and tired. But a part of her knew it wasn't her imagination. She stopped vacuuming and stood completely still, listening. The house was in absolute silence. There was no sound of Victoria in the office above, no sound of cars on the street outside. Nothing. The silence was so complete it seemed abnormal, as if the house existed in a bubble separate from the rest of the world. That's when she heard it, a very low sound, almost imperceptible, coming from somewhere above. It sounded like a scratch or a movement, so faint that Amelia wasn't sure if it was real or if her mind was creating things. She stood still for 3 full minutes, holding her breath, listening. But the sound didn't repeat. She shook her head and went back to work. She was getting paranoid. It was just an old house with the normal sounds of creaking wood and old pipes. Nothing more. But in the afternoon, while cleaning the ground floor bathroom, it happened again. This time it was clearer. A sound of something heavy being moved, definitely coming from the floor above. Amelia opened the bathroom door and looked up at the ceiling, as if she could see through it. The sound stopped immediately. Her heart raced. Was there someone else in the house besides Victoria? Or was Victoria moving furniture? But why would she do that in the middle of a workday? She finished cleaning the bathroom quickly and stood in the hallway, undecided. Should she go up and ask if Victoria needed help? But the order had been clear. Do not disturb unless absolutely necessary, and Amelia didn't want to give Victoria any reason to be dissatisfied. She continued with her tasks, but her mind kept returning to that sound. At 3 in the afternoon, as she was folding washed towels in the utility room, she heard the front door open. It was Arthur, returning. He came in carrying a leather briefcase and barely glanced in Amelia's direction before going upstairs. Amelia watched him go up. There was something in his posture, in the way he climbed the steps with restrained haste, that suggested urgency. He went straight to the second floor and she heard muffled voices coming from there. Victoria and Arthur talking, their voices low but intense. She tried not to pay attention and focused on finishing the tasks on the list. By 5 o'clock, everything was done. The house was impeccable, every object in its place, every surface gleaming. Amelia went up to her room to rest before starting to prepare dinner. She sat on the narrow bed and picked up her phone. There was a message from Mrs. Gable, with a picture of Eleanor smiling, sitting at the table eating soup. Seeing her mother's face brought tears to Amelia's eyes. At least one thing in her life was improving. Eleanor was stronger. The medicines Amelia had managed to buy with an advance on her salary were working. That made it all worthwhile, Amelia told herself. The strangeness of the house, the constant discomfort, the feeling of always being watched and judged. It was all worth it if it meant Eleanor would live. But as she lay on the narrow bed, staring at the white ceiling, Amelia couldn't completely shake the fear growing in the back of her mind. There were secrets in that house, secrets that Victoria and Arthur protected with obvious paranoia, and Amelia was beginning to fear that discovering those secrets could cost more than she was willing to pay. The following days fell into a strange and uncomfortable routine. Amelia would wake up early, prepare breakfast, endlessly clean the immense house that never seemed to get truly dirty, cook meals that were eaten in silence, and spend her nights in her small room listening to the inexplicable sounds of the mansion. Victoria rarely spoke to her beyond giving short orders and criticizing minute details. Arthur was even worse, treating Amelia as if she were invisible. He would pass her in, the corridors without a glance, without a greeting, as if she were just another piece of furniture. On Wednesday, Amelia was cleaning the living room when she noticed something strange. There were photographs on the shelves, but they were all of landscapes, of exotic places, of sunsets on distant beaches. No photos of the couple, no photos of family, friends, or happy moments. It was as if they were trying to erase any trace of humanity from the house. "You're taking too long in this room." Victoria's voice behind her made Amelia jump. "I'm sorry, ma'am, I was just making sure everything was perfect." Victoria approached, inspecting every corner with her sharp eyes. "That corner over there still has dust. Look." She ran her finger along the edge of a high shelf and showed it to Amelia. There was a microscopic amount of dust on her fingertip. "I'll clean it right away, ma'am." "Do that. And Amelia?" Victoria turned, her blue eyes piercing Amelia's. "I notice when things are not done perfectly. I hope you understand that." "Yes, ma'am. I understand perfectly." That night, Amelia was in the kitchen preparing dinner when she heard voices coming from the office on the second floor. She couldn't make out the words, but the tone was argumentative. Victoria and Arthur were fighting. It was the first time she had heard any real emotion from the couple. Suddenly Arthur's voice grew louder. "We can't go on like this. It's too risky." Victoria's reply was lower, inaudible. Then silence. Amelia quickly turned back to the stove, pretending she hadn't heard anything. A few minutes later, Arthur came down the stairs hurriedly, grabbed his car keys and left, slamming the door. Victoria appeared in the kitchen shortly after, her face composed with no sign of the argument she had just had. "Dinner will be ready in 10 minutes, ma'am," Amelia said, trying to sound normal. "Excellent. Serve it for me only. My husband had to go out." That night, after Victoria went up to her room, Amelia lay awake thinking, what did Arthur mean by too risky? What were they hiding? And why did such a large house need so many locked doors? On Thursday morning, Amelia was changing the bed linen in the couple's room when she saw something that caught her attention. On Arthur's bedside table was a business card partially hidden under some papers. She glanced at the bedroom door to make sure she was alone, then quickly picked up the card. It was white, minimalist, with only a strange symbol printed in gold. 3 interlocking circles forming a pattern that seemed both symmetrical and unsettling. Below the symbol, just an address in London, 1423 Regent Street, Suite 805. No name, No phone number, no indication of what it meant. Amelia took a quick photo of the card with her phone and put it back exactly where it was. Her heart was pounding. She knew she was violating her employer's privacy, but her curiosity and unease were stronger. That afternoon, when Victoria and Arthur went out together for the first time since Amelia had started working there, she took the opportunity to explore the house a little more. She didn't try to open the locked doors. She knew it would be impossible without the digital passcodes, but she observed every detail that might give her a clue about what was happening. In the second-floor office, she looked at the spines of the books on the shelves. There were many books on psychology, neuroscience, studies on twins, child development. One book in particular caught her eye: Telepathic Connections in Multiple Siblings. Why would a childless couple be so interested in these subjects? Amelia was so engrossed in examining the books that she didn't hear the car returning. She only realized when she heard the front door open. Quickly, she left the office and went down the stairs, pretending she was going to check the cleaning on the first floor. Victoria was in the living room, taking off her coat. Her eyes met Amelia's, and for a moment there was something there, a suspicion, an unasked question. "Were you looking for something?" Victoria's voice was dangerously calm. "No, Mum. Just checking if everything was in order on the upper floors." "Interesting, because I left a trap to see if anyone would enter the office while we were out. A strand of hair on the door, at a precise height, and it has been disturbed." Amelia's blood ran cold. I only went into dust, Mum, as you asked me to do once a week." Victoria approached slowly, like a predator circling its prey. "You went in. But what exactly were you looking for, Amelia?" "Nothing, ma'am. I was just doing my job." "Your job is to clean. It is not to snoop. It is not to meddle with things that do not concern you." Victoria was so close now that Amelia could smell her expensive perfume and see the small lines around her eyes. "Do you remember what we discussed on your first day? About discretion, about not asking questions?" "Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry. It won't happen again." "I should hope not, because it would be very unfortunate for you if I had to fire you. Your mother is still ill, isn't she? Still needs those expensive medicines?" The threat was clear. Victoria knew everything about her life, her vulnerabilities, her weak points, and she wouldn't hesitate to use it against her. "I understand, Mum." "Excellent. Now go and prepare dinner. And Amelia, from now on, you do not enter the office again, not even to clean. I will take care of that room personally." Amelia nodded and went down to the kitchen, her legs trembling. She sat on a chair for a moment, trying to calm her racing heart. She had crossed a line, and Victoria had made it very clear that she was being watched. That night, Amelia barely touched the food she had set aside for herself. She stayed in her room, lying on the bed thinking about everything she had discovered. The books about twins, the mysterious card, the argument between the couple, Victoria's paranoia. Everything pointed to something very wrong happening in that house. But what could she do? She needed this job. Eleanor depended on the money. If she were fired now, they would be back in the same desperate situation as before, perhaps even worse because Victoria had made it clear she had information about them. Amelia picked up her phone and looked at the photo she had taken of the business card. That symbol of 3 interlocking circles continued to bother her. There was something familiar about it, but she couldn't place it. She decided to take a risk and did a quick internet search for the symbol. Several similar images appeared, but none were exactly the same. She tried searching for the address. 1423 Regent Street existed, but there was no information about what was in Suite 805. She was putting her phone away when she heard it again. The footsteps. Slower this time, more deliberate, coming from the floor above. Amelia held her breath and lay motionless in bed. The footsteps continued, pacing back and forth, then stopped. There was the sound of a door being opened, then closed. Then silence. She waited 10 minutes before getting up and opening her door slowly. The corridor was dark and empty, but there was a faint light coming from above, from the second floor. Someone was awake up there, walking around the house in the middle of the night. Amelia closed the door again and went back to bed, but sleep didn't come. She lay there listening to the sounds of the house, trying to decipher what was happening. Around 4 in the morning, she heard something different. It wasn't footsteps, it was something being dragged. A heavy sound, scraping on the floor, coming from somewhere distant in the house. She got up and pressed her ear to the door. The sound continued for a few minutes, then stopped abruptly. Amelia waited, but there was nothing more. Just the oppressive silence she now knew so well. When the alarm rang at 6 in the morning, she woke up more tired than when she had gone to sleep. She looked at herself in the bathroom mirror and saw the dark circles were even deeper, her skin even paler. She was physically and mentally exhausted, but it was Thursday. Tomorrow would be Friday, and then she would finally have Sunday off. She could see Eleanor get out of this suffocating house, breathe normal air for a few hours. During breakfast, Victoria and Arthur sat at the table as usual, eating in silence. But Amelia noticed something different. They had dark circles too. Arthur seemed tense, nervous, constantly looking at his watch. Victoria was even more rigid than usual, if that was possible. Something had happened during the night. Something that had left them as disturbed as Amelia herself. She served the coffee and stood by the sideboard, discreetly observing the couple. They exchanged a quick glance, loaded with a meaning Amelia couldn't decipher. "Amelia," Arthur said suddenly, the first time he had addressed her directly since her first day, "did you sleep well last night?" The question was strange, almost threatening. "Yes, sir." "Why?" "You didn't hear any noise? Nothing unusual?" Amelia hesitated. Was it a trap? Tell the truth or lie? She decided on a middle ground. "I slept soundly, sir. I didn't hear anything." Arthur and Victoria exchanged another look. This time Amelia was sure there was relief on their faces. "Good," Victoria said. "It's important that you sleep well. We need you to be rested to do your job properly." But Amelia knew that wasn't it. They were testing her, checking if she had heard something. And now they knew that even if she had, she was willing to lie about it. She didn't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing. The rest of the day passed without incident, but the tension in the house was palpable. Arthur remained locked in his office for most of the time. Victoria disappeared for hours, only returning late in the afternoon, and Amelia continued her work, cleaning, cooking, pretending that everything was normal. But nothing was normal. And with each passing day, she felt more trapped in that house, more involved in something she didn't understand, more certain that there were terrible secrets hidden behind those locked doors. Saturday arrived, and Amelia felt immense relief, knowing that the next day she could leave the house. A week had passed, but it felt like a month. Each day dragged on in a suffocating routine of silence, cold stares, and inexplicable sounds during the night. She had arranged with Mrs. Gable to spend Sunday afternoon with Eleanor. She could finally hug her mother, check on her treatment personally, and breathe fresh air away from the oppressive atmosphere of the mansion. But Saturday held surprises. During lunch, Victoria announced that they would be going out for the evening and would only return on Sunday morning. It was the first time Amelia would be completely alone in the house at night. "There's enough food in the fridge for your dinner," Victoria said. "You will be responsible for the security of the house. The alarm system activates automatically at 11 p.m. and can only be deactivated with our fingerprint. Therefore, do not attempt to leave after that time. Understood?" "Yes, ma'am." "And Amelia?" Victoria looked at her with that unsettling intensity. "Stay on the ground floor. There is absolutely no reason for you to go up to the other floors when you are alone. No reason at all." The emphasis on the last words was clear. It was an order, not a suggestion. At 7 in the evening, Victoria and Arthur left. Amelia watched them from the kitchen window as they got into the black Mercedes and disappeared through the gate. For the first time in a week, she was completely alone. The silence of the house seemed even more oppressive without the presence of her employers. Amelia had a quick dinner in the kitchen, washed the dishes, and went back to her room. It was only 8 o'clock, but she was exhausted. Maybe she could get to sleep early, get some real rest for the first time. She lay on the bed and tried to relax, but it was impossible. The large, empty house seemed alive around her. Every creak, every sound of the wind against the windows, every little noise put her on alert. She picked up her phone and called Mrs. Gable. "How is my mother?" "She's fine, dear. Ate her dinner well, took all her medicine. She's watching the soaps now. Do you want to speak to her? Please. Eleanor's voice filled her ears and Amelia felt tears burn her eyes. My dear, how are you? Are you eating well? I am, Mum. And you? Are you in any pain? Nothing the medicine can't handle. Don't worry about me. Tell me how it is. There. Are the people good to you? Amelia hesitated. How could she explain the strangeness of the house, the constant discomfort, the nightly sounds, the locked doors? Everything's fine, Mum. It's a job like any other. The employers are a bit reserved, but they don't treat me badly. Are you sure? You sound tired. I'm just still adjusting. I'll come see you tomorrow. I'll bring the medicine you need, okay? Okay, my dear. Take care. I love you. I love you too, Mum. She hung up and stared at the ceiling. The conversation with Eleanor always calmed her, but today the effect was short-lived. The feeling of being trapped, of being involved in something dangerous, returned with full force. It was 10 o'clock when Amelia finally started to feel sleepy. She was almost asleep when she heard a sound that made her sit up in bed instantly, her heart pounding. Footsteps coming from the first floor. Slow, dragging footsteps, as if someone was walking with difficulty. But she was alone in the house. Victoria and Arthur had left. There was no one else there. Amelia lay motionless in bed, holding her breath. The footsteps continued, moving slowly across the first floor. Then the sound of a door being opened, one of the locked doors. She was sure of it. Her first instinct was to grab the phone and call the police. There must be someone in the house, an intruder perhaps. But then she remembered the cameras in every corner, the sophisticated security system, the gate that wouldn't open without authorization. How could anyone have gotten in? The footsteps stopped. There was a long, tense silence. Then a different sound, something like a muffled cry. Faint, distant, but unmistakable. Amelia got out of bed slowly, her body trembling. She went to the door and opened it just a crack, peeking into the corridor. It was dark, but she could see a faint light coming from the staircase leading to the first floor. She knew she should stay in her room. Victoria had been clear. Do not go up to the other floors. But those sounds, those footsteps, that crying, there was someone or something up there, and she had to know what it was. She left her room on silent, bare feet, hugging the wall. She reached the bottom of the stairs and looked up. The faint light seemed to be coming from one of the locked rooms. The door was ajar, something she had never seen before. She climbed the stairs slowly, each step seeming to scream under her feet, despite her care to be silent. She reached the first floor and stopped, listening. The crying had stopped, but she could hear something else now, a kind of whisper, low, multiple voices. She approached the ajar door. It was the second room in the corridor, one that was always locked. Through the crack, she could only see darkness, but the whispers continued. She pushed the door slowly. It creaked, slightly, and Amelia froze, but the whispers didn't stop. With her heart in her throat, she peered into the room. It was empty, completely empty. No furniture, no decoration, just white walls and a wooden floor. But there was something strange about the walls. They were covered in paper, hundreds of sheets tacked up in a chaotic pattern. She moved closer and saw they were children's drawings. Simple drawings made with colored pencils, showing figures of people, houses, trees. Drawings that any 5- or 6-year-old could make. But Victoria had said there were no children in the house. Amelia looked closer. In some drawings there were 4 identical female figures all holding hands. In others, a large house with many windows. In still others, sad faces with tears falling from their eyes. The crying started again, louder now, closer. But it wasn't coming from that room. It was coming from above, from the second floor. Amelia left the room quickly and looked at the stairs leading to the top floor. The faint light was still shining up there. The whispers had now turned into more distinct voices, childish, pleading voices. She went up without thinking about the consequences. She had to know what was happening. She reached the second floor and followed the sound. It was coming from the end of the corridor, from that metal door that Victoria had forbidden her to even mention. The door was ajar. Impossible, Amelia thought. That door was always locked with a digital lock. How could it be open now? She approached slowly, her legs trembling so much she could barely walk. She pushed the door, and it opened with a loud creak. On the other side was a narrow staircase leading up to the attic. The crying was coming from there, clearly. Now, it wasn't one cry, it was several. Children crying, whispering, calling for help. Amelia climbed the stairs, each step an effort against the fear that paralyzed her. She reached the top and found another door, this one of simple wood, also ajar. She pushed it slowly. The attic was spacious but almost empty. There were just a few mattresses on the floor, blankets, some scattered toys, and in the farthest corner, in an area dimly lit by the faint light coming through the single small window, she saw something that made her take a step back, her hand flying. To her mouth to stifle a scream. 4 small mattresses arranged in a circle. On each one marks of chains attached to rings in the floor, but the mattresses were empty. There was no one there. Amelia looked around desperately. The crying had stopped. The whispers had fallen silent. The attic was completely silent now except for her own ragged breathing. Had it been her imagination? The exhaustion, the stress, the sleepless nights making her hear things that didn't exist. But no, it was impossible. She had seen the children's drawings, the marks on the mattresses, the chains. Suddenly, she heard the sound of a car pulling into the garage. Her blood ran cold. Victoria and Arthur were back. She ran down the attic stairs, closed the metal door behind her, descended to the first floor, then to the ground floor. She reached her room, breathless, closed the door and leaned against it, her heart beating so hard it felt like it would burst from her chest. She heard voices at the entrance, Victoria and Arthur talking quietly, footsteps through the house. Then, silence. Amelia lay on the bed, fully clothed, trembling. What had she seen? What did it all mean? The chains, the mattresses, the children's drawings. Children had been in that house. Maybe they still were. But where? She spent the rest of the night awake, every sound making her jump. When the alarm rang at 6 in the morning, she was exhausted, but relieved. It was Sunday. She could leave. She could think clearly away from that place. She prepared breakfast on autopilot. Victoria appeared punctually, but Arthur did not. She ate in silence, watching Amelia with those piercing blue eyes. "Did you sleep well?" The question was casual, but Amelia felt the weight behind it. "Yes, ma'am, very well." "You didn't hear any noise, nothing strange during the night?" "No, ma'am, I was so tired I slept soundly." Victoria studied her for a long moment. "Good. Enjoy your day off. Be back tomorrow at 8 in the morning." Amelia barely waited for Victoria to finish. She grabbed her bag and walked out the main door, feeling the fresh morning air on her face, as if it were the first time she had breathed in days. But as she walked towards the gate that opened automatically to let her out, she couldn't help but look back at the huge, silent mansion. And she knew with absolute certainty that something terrible was happening within those walls, something involving children, something that needed to be discovered, even if it meant putting her own life at risk. Amelia spent the entire Sunday with Eleanor, but her mind was elsewhere. As she prepared lunch in the small flat, as she helped her mother bathe, as they watched television together on the worn-out sofa, she couldn't stop thinking about what she had seen in the attic, the chains, the mattresses, the children's drawings with those 4 identical girls holding hands. "You're quiet today, my dear," Eleanor said, holding Amelia's hand. "Did something happen?" Amelia forced a smile. "No, Mum, just tired. It's a lot of work." "Do they treat you well? They don't overwork you?" "No, Mum, it's all fine. Look, I managed to buy all the medicine you need for the month, and I paid the back rent. The landlord said he won't bother us anymore." Eleanor smiled, but there was worry in her eyes. "That's wonderful, dear. But are you taking care of yourself too? Are you eating properly?" "I am. The food there is great. I cook it myself, and always set a plate aside for me." Lies. Half-truths. Amelia hated lying to her mother, but how could she tell the truth? How could she explain the silent, threatening house, the cold and strange employers, the nightly sounds that terrified her? Eleanor already had enough problems, she didn't need more worries. When it was time to go back, Amelia hugged her mother for a long time. Eleanor was thinner, more fragile, but there was a glimmer of hope in her eyes that hadn't been there for months. It was the relief of knowing the bills were paid, that the medicine wouldn't run out, that maybe things were finally getting better. Amelia didn't have the heart to destroy that hope. The journey back to the Wentworth estate seemed shorter, faster, as if fate were eager to return her to that gilded cage. When the mansion gate opened and she entered with her suitcase, she felt the familiar weight of the house fall upon her shoulders. Victoria was in the living room when Amelia entered. Punctual as always. "Good. Leave your things and prepare dinner. We'll have a guest tonight." It was the first time they had mentioned having company. Amelia went to her room, put away her suitcase, and quickly went down to the kitchen. She checked the notebook with her employer's preferences and began preparing a more elaborate meal: grilled salmon, steamed vegetables, wild rice. At 8 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. Amelia was putting the finishing touches on the presentation of the dishes when she heard Victoria open the door and greet someone. A male voice, deep and formal, replied, "Amelia, serve the dinner," Victoria called. Amelia took the dishes to the dining room and finally saw the guest. He was a man in his 50s with completely white hair, gold-rimmed glasses, and an impeccable suit. There was something in his eyes that made her immediately uncomfortable, a clinical coldness, as if he were evaluating everyone in the room like lab specimens. "This is our employee, Amelia," Victoria introduced. The man barely glanced at her, just gave a slight nod. Amelia served the dinner and stood by the sideboard, as always, but this time they talked, quietly, in controlled voices, but she could catch a few words. "The results have been promising," the man was saying, "but we need more time. The synchronicity is developing as predicted, but forcing the process could be detrimental." "I understand," Arthur replied, "but how much more time? It's been over a year." "These studies take time. We cannot rush nature, especially with such unique subjects." Amelia pretended to be staring into space, but every word was etched into her mind. Studies, subjects, synchronicity. What did it all mean? After dinner, the three of them went up to the office on the second floor. Amelia cleaned the kitchen slowly, trying to process what she had heard. When she finally finished, she went to her room and lay there waiting. Around midnight, she heard the guest leave. The car drove off and the house returned to silence. Amelia waited another half hour before getting up. She knew she was taking a huge risk, but she needed to know more. She left her room silently and went up to the first floor. The locked bedroom doors were still closed, but she needed to get to the second floor, to that metal door that led to the attic. She was halfway up the stairs when she heard it. The crying. Clearer this time. Closer. It wasn't her imagination. They were real, childish voices crying softly, as if trying not to be heard. The sound was coming from the attic, she was sure now. Amelia quickly climbed the rest of the stairs and reached the metal door. It was locked. She pulled the handle hard, but it wouldn't budge. She pressed her ear against the cold door. The crying continued. 4 different voices, she could distinguish them now. 4 children crying, whispering words she couldn't fully understand. "Please," a little voice said. "We want our mum." "It's dark," said another. "I'm scared." "When are we going home?" asked a third. The fourth just cried, a low, continuous sound of despair. Amelia felt tears roll down her face. There were children in there, trapped, frightened, and she had no way to help them at that moment without the code to open the door. "Hello," she whispered, trying to be heard without making too much noise. "Can you hear me?" The crying stopped instantly. There was a tense silence, then urgent whispers. "There's someone out there," one of the voices said. "Is it the bad woman?" asked another fearfully. "I don't know. Be quiet." Amelia tried again. "I'm not going to hurt you. My name is Amelia. I work here. How many of you are there?" Silence. Then, hesitantly, a voice replied, "There are 4 of us." "How old are you?" 5. We're all 5. Amelia's heart raced. "Are you sisters?" "We're quadruplets," replied the same voice, the bravest one. "We're identical. Our names are Charlotte, Chloe, Clara, and Catherine. Why are you here? What do these people want with you?" Before they could answer, Amelia heard a sound that made her freeze. Footsteps coming up the stairs, quick, furious. She turned and saw Victoria reaching the top of the stairs, her face contorted with rage. Behind her, Arthur, equally furious. "What do you think you're doing?" Victoria's voice was low but sharp as a blade. Amelia took a step back, pressing against the metal door. "I heard crying. I thought someone needed help." "You heard crying," Victoria repeated, advancing slowly. "Interesting, because I didn't hear anything. Arthur, did you hear anything?" "No, nothing." "So you're saying you heard voices where there is no one?" Victoria was now inches from Amelia. "Or are you saying you were snooping where you shouldn't have been? I swear I heard children crying. There's someone in there." Amelia pointed to the door. Arthur laughed, a dry, cruel sound. "You're hearing things. It must be the stress of the job, or maybe you're not eating properly." "No, I know what I heard. There are children trapped in there." The slap came so fast Amelia had no time to defend herself. Victoria hit her hard, making her head snap to the side. Pain exploded across her face. "Never raise your voice to us again," Victoria hissed. "Never make ridiculous accusations again. You know nothing. You heard nothing. And if you did, you will forget it immediately." Amelia held her face, tears of pain and indignation streaming down. "You can't do this. If there are children here, if you've hurt them in any way, I'll go to the police." Arthur stepped closer, pulling his phone from his pocket. He showed the screen to Amelia. It was a photo of Eleanor, taken that very day when Amelia had gone out to the pharmacy. Someone had followed them. Someone had photographed her mother. "You have a very simple choice," Arthur said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "You can do your job, keep your mouth shut, and continue to earn your salary. Your mother will continue to receive her treatment. You will pay your bills. Everything will be fine. Or you can cause trouble, ask questions, draw attention to things you do not understand. And in that case," Victoria continued, "you will lose your job. Your mother will lose access to the medicines that keep her alive. And you will discover that people like us have friends in very high places. Friends who can make your life a living hell in ways you can't even imagine." Amelia looked at the photo of Eleanor, so fragile, so ill, completely dependent on her. Then she looked at the metal door behind, her knowing that on the other side were 4 scared, trapped little girls who needed help. "You're not giving me a choice." "Exactly," Victoria said. "Now go back to your room. Tomorrow morning you will wake up and continue your work as if nothing happened. You heard nothing, you saw nothing, you know nothing, is that clear?" Amelia nodded slowly, hating herself for her weakness, but knowing she had no option at that moment. "It's clear." "Good. Now go." Amelia went down the stairs with trembling legs. She entered her room and closed the door. She sat on the bed, and finally allowed the tears to flow freely. She cried for her helplessness, for her cowardice, for those 4 little girls who remained trapped while she was here, free, but unable to help them. But as she cried, a resolve began to form in her mind. Victoria and Arthur thought she was beaten, that she would choose her own safety and her mother's above all else, and for now she would let them think that. But Amelia had already decided. She would find a way to save those children, even if it meant losing everything, even if it meant putting herself in danger, because some things were more important than safety, some things were worth any risk, and 4 innocent little girls trapped in a dark attic were definitely worth it. Amelia woke up with a sore face where Victoria had hit her. She looked at herself in the bathroom mirror and saw a red mark, which would soon turn into a bruise. She splashed cold water on it, trying to reduce the swelling. She needed to compose herself. She needed to pretend she was defeated, obedient, too scared to cause trouble. She went down to the kitchen at 6:30 and started preparing breakfast. Her hands trembled slightly as she cut fruit and made coffee. Every sound in the house made her jump. She knew Victoria and Arthur would be watching her every move, looking for any sign of rebellion. Victoria appeared at 7:30, impeccable as always. Her eyes went straight to Amelia's face, to the red mark. There was no regret or guilt in her expression, only cold satisfaction. "Good morning, Amelia. I see you slept well," Good morning, ma'am. Amelia kept her eyes down, submissive. I hope our conversation last night was clear. I wouldn't want to repeat it. It was very clear, ma'am. It won't happen again. Excellent. Victoria sat down at the table. Prepare lunch earlier today, 12:30. We will have to leave shortly after. During breakfast, Arthur appeared. He looked at Amelia with that appraising gaze, as if checking to see if she had truly submitted or if she still posed a threat. Amelia pretended not to notice, serving him with her head bowed. The day passed in constant tension. Amelia did her work mechanically, cleaning, organizing, preparing meals. But her mind was elsewhere, planning, calculating, trying to find a way to help. Those girls without destroying everything. At 12:30 she served lunch. Victoria and Arthur ate quickly and left shortly after. Amelia watched them leave from the kitchen window. They said they would only be back in the evening. She had hours to think, to plan, perhaps to act. She went up to the second floor knowing she was directly violating Victoria's orders. She stopped in front of the metal door. It was locked, as she expected. The digital lock glowed with a red light. Without the code or her employer's fingerprints, it was impossible to open. "Hello," she whispered, leaning against the door. "Can you hear me?" There was a silence, then low voices, urgent whispers from the other side. "It's her again," one voice said. "Can we trust her?" asked another. Finally, the bravest voice replied, "We're here. You came back." "Yes, my name is Amelia. I want to help you, but I need to understand what's happening. Can you tell me?" There was a long pause. Then, slowly, the story began to emerge. Charlotte, the most talkative of the four, was the one who spoke. "We were taken from the school park. A long time ago, we were playing on the swings when a man and a woman came. They said our mum was in the car, that she needed us. We went because we thought it was true." "But it wasn't our mum," continued another voice, Chloe. "They brought us here. We stay in this room. They do strange things to us." "What kind of things?" Amelia asked, her stomach churning. "Tests," replied Clara. "They separate us into different rooms and ask questions. They want to know if we can feel what the others are feeling. If we can know what the others are thinking, they get excited when one of us knows the other is in pain or scared." "They hurt us sometimes," said Catherine, her voice the most fragile of the four. "Not a lot, but enough to see if the others feel it too. And we do. We always feel it." Amelia felt sick. "Do you remember where you're from, your family?" "We lived in Bristol," said Charlotte. "Our mum's name is Helen. She's a teacher. We're 7 now, I think. We've lost track of time here." 7 years old. Not 5, as Amelia had thought. They had been kidnapped 2 years ago then. 2 years trapped in that attic, being subjected to cruel experiments. "I'm going to get you out of here," Amelia promised, even without knowing how. "I'll find a way." "You can't," said Charlotte. "They're very powerful, and they said if we try to escape, they'll hurt our mum. They said they're watching her, that they always know where she is. The same threat they used on Amelia, control through fear, through the people they loved. Even so, I'm going to try, but I have to be smart. I need time to make a plan. There are more people involved," warned Klausin. "It's not just the man and woman who live here. Other people come, men in suits with computers and machines. They take our blood, do tests, watch us for hours." "The man who came yesterday?" "Yes, he's the worst. The doctor. He talks about us like we're animals, like we're not real people." Amelia stayed there for another half-hour, talking to the girls through the door, gathering information, trying to keep their hope alive. When she finally went downstairs, she had more questions than answers, but she also had something she didn't have before, a clear purpose. She spent the rest of the afternoon thinking. She couldn't just go to the police. Victoria and Arthur had connections. They had made that clear. And if she reported them without solid proof, they could simply deny everything, remove the children, before any investigation could happen. Worse, they could carry out their threats against Eleanor. She needed evidence, undeniable proof, and she needed to protect both the girls and her mother in the process. When Victoria and Arthur returned that evening, Amelia was in the kitchen preparing dinner, the perfect picture of a submissive and obedient maid. She served the meal. Without meeting their eyes, spoke only when spoken to, and kept her head down. "Much better," Victoria commented, a cold smile on her face. "I see our conversation really worked." That night, in her room, Amelia picked up her phone. She had to be careful. The security cameras were everywhere in the house, but presumably not in her room. She hoped not. She began to do discreet searches. She looked for cases of missing children in Bristol. She found several, but then she saw something that made her stop. A news report from 2 years ago: quadruplets disappear from school. Park in Bristol. The photo showed 4 identical little girls, all smiling at the camera. Charlotte, Chloe, Clara and Catherine Shaw. The mother, Helen Shaw, a state school teacher, had spent the last 2 years searching for her daughters. She had given interviews, run campaigns, pleaded for information. She had never given up. Amelia saved the link and continued searching. She needed to understand more about what Victoria and Arthur were doing. The experiments, the tests. She searched for twin studies, telepathic connections, synchronicity. She found references to controversial experiments that had taken place decades ago, studies on whether identical twins shared any special connection beyond genetics. Most of the scientific community considered it pseudoscience. But apparently, some people still believed, still searched for proof. And quadruplets would be the perfect research subjects. 4 genetically identical individuals. If there were any telepathic connection, it would be stronger among 4 than among 2. Amelia put her phone away, feeling sick. Victoria and Arthur weren't just kidnappers. They were fanatics, obsessed with a pseudo-scientific theory, willing to destroy the lives of innocent children in search of validation for their delusional beliefs. Over the next few days, Amelia kept up the charade. She was the perfect maid during the day. But at night, when Victoria and Arthur were busy or asleep, she would go up to the metal door and talk to the girls. She built a bond with them, gained their trust, kept their hope alive. Charlotte told her more details. The girls were kept in the attic most of the time with chains on their ankles, so they couldn't escape, even if the door was left open. They were fed, kept clean, but treated like lab specimens. The doctor came every week to conduct tests. Sometimes there were other people, observers, who took notes and asked questions. "They talk about us like we're special," Charlotte said, "like they're going to discover some important secret from us. But we just want to go home." "You will," Amelia promised. "I swear I'll find a way." But how? That was the question that kept her awake every night. How to save 4 little girls from powerful, well-connected people without putting everyone in even greater danger? The answer came in an unexpected way. On Friday, Amelia was cleaning the office. Victoria had finally allowed her back in, confident that Amelia was under control, when she saw an open diary on Arthur's desk. There was a note for the following week. Tuesday, 3 p.m., the Institute, presentation of results. Below it, an address, 1423 Regent Street, Suite 805, the same address from the mysterious business card she had photographed weeks ago. Amelia took a quick photo of the page with her phone. She finally had a concrete lead, a physical place where this organization operated. Maybe there she would find more evidence, more information about how many people were involved. But it also meant that Victoria and Arthur would be out on Tuesday afternoon. 3 hours, maybe more. It would be her best chance to try something. Amelia came down from the office with her heart racing. She had 5 days to make a plan, 5 days to figure out how to open that metal door, how to free the girls, how to protect everyone. 5 days to do the riskiest and most important thing of her entire life. And as she prepared dinner that night, serving Victoria and Arthur with the same submissiveness as always, Amelia allowed herself a small, internal smile. They thought they had broken her, that she was under control. But they were about to discover they had made a terrible mistake. They had underestimated a desperate mother protecting her family. And now they had made her an ally of 4 equally desperate little girls. Together, they would find a way out of this nightmare, or they would die trying. The weekend passed in a slow agony. Amelia visited Eleanor on Sunday and had to pretend everything was fine, even with anxiety gnawing at her stomach. The mark on her face had faded, but was still visible. She told her mother she had walked into a cupboard. Eleanor didn't quite believe her but didn't press. "My dear, if anything is wrong, you'll tell me, won't you?" Eleanor held her hand with fragile strength. "The money doesn't matter. Nothing is worth your safety." Amelia kissed her mother's forehead. "Everything's fine, Mum, I promise. Just a few more weeks and this will all be over." It wasn't exactly a lie. In a few weeks, one way or another, it would all be over. Monday dragged on. Amelia did her work on autopilot, her mind busy planning every detail of what she would do on Tuesday afternoon. She spoke briefly with the girls, through the door that night, telling them she would try something soon. "Be brave," she whispered. "I won't abandon you." Tuesday dawned clear and warm. Amelia woke at 5 in the morning, unable to sleep any longer. Her heart was pounding. Today was the day. Everything depended on today. She prepared breakfast with trembling hands. Victoria and Arthur appeared punctually, already dressed formally for their appointment at the Institute. Amelia noticed Arthur was carrying a leather briefcase with documents. "We'll be leaving at 2 in the afternoon," Victoria informed her. "We'll only be back in the evening. You have enough." "Tasks to keep you busy. Clean the living room completely, reorganize the pantry, wash the ground floor curtains." "Yes, ma'am." "And Amelia?" Victoria looked at her with that icy intensity. "Don't do anything stupid. The security cameras are always recording. Always." "I understand, ma'am." At 2 o'clock sharp, the black Mercedes pulled out of the garage. Amelia watched them leave from the kitchen window, her heart racing. She waited an extra 15 minutes just to be sure they wouldn't come back for something they'd forgotten. Then she began. First, she had to deal with the cameras. Victoria had mentioned they were always recording, but Amelia had noticed something during her weeks in the house. The cameras were sophisticated, but the monitoring system was in a small closet on the ground floor, near the garage. She went there and opened the door. There was a screen showing feeds from several cameras: the entrance, living room, corridors, garden. The system looked complex, but Amelia didn't need to disable it completely. She just needed to cause a temporary failure. She looked at the back of the equipment and saw the cables. Carefully, she unplugged a few of them, enough to make the system flicker, and reboot. When she looked at the screen again, the images were frozen, showing the empty rooms. The system would take a few minutes to recalibrate, enough time for what she needed to do. She ran up to the second floor and stopped in front of the metal door. The problem was the digital lock. Without the code or the fingerprints of Victoria or Arthur, it was impossible to open normally. But Amelia had a theory. She had seen Arthur open the door once at a glance, when he thought she wasn't looking. He had typed something quickly, 4 digits, and she had paid attention to the pattern of his finger movements. She tried the first combination that came to mind: 1, 7, 2, 3, the house number on Regent Street. The light turned red. Wrong. She thought again. She tried another combination: 0, 8, 0, 5, the suite number in the Regent Street building. The light flashed and turned green. A mechanical click. The door opened. Amelia pushed it, revealing the narrow staircase leading to the attic. She climbed quickly, her heart hammering in her chest. She reached the wooden door at the top and opened it. The attic was lit by the faint light coming through the small window. And there, on mattresses arranged in a circle, were 4 identical little girls, staring at her with wide eyes full of fear and hope. They were smaller than Amelia had imagined, more fragile. They had thin but sturdy chains securing their ankles to rings in the floor. They wore simple clothes, clean but worn. Their faces were pale from so much time without sunlight, their hair long and tangled. "You're real," whispered one of them, Charlotte, whom Amelia recognized by her voice. "You're real. I'm real. And I'm getting you out of here." Amelia ran to them and examined the chains. They were secured with small padlocks. She needed something to break them. "Are there any tools here?" she asked. "There's a box over there," Chloe pointed. "They use it sometimes to fix things." Amelia found the box and grabbed a heavy screwdriver. She started working on the first padlock, trying to force it. It was harder than it looked in the movies. The metal was tough. "How much time do we have?" asked Clara, her voice tense. I don't know, a couple of hours, maybe 3, they went to a meeting at the Institute. The Institute, Catherine repeated fearfully. That's where they do the worst tests. Amelia kept working, sweating with the effort. Finally, the first padlock gave way with a snap. Charlotte was free. Quickly, Amelia moved on to the next one. As she worked, she asked questions. Do you remember anything that could help prove what they did to you? Documents, recordings, anything? There's a notebook, said Charlotte, now helping with the third padlock. The doctor always writes in it after the tests. He left it once and I managed to read some things. He writes about us, about the experiments, about the results. Where is this notebook? In the office downstairs, in the drawer of the big desk. The second padlock opened. Chloe was free. 2 more to go. Can you walk? Are you hurt? We can, replied Clara. They let us walk around the attic, exercise a little. They say they need to keep us healthy for the tests. The third padlock finally gave way. Only one left. When we get out of here, Amelia said as she worked on the last padlock, we're going to go downstairs quickly and quietly. We don't know. If there's anyone else on the property, we'll grab that notebook and then leave through the main gate. What if the gate doesn't open? Asked Catherine. It will open. It has to. The last padlock broke. The 4 girls were free. They stood up, wobbly after so long in chains, but determined. Amelia looked at these 4 identical children, 7 years old with 2 years of trauma, and felt a wave of rage so intense it almost made her dizzy. Let's go, she said, offering her hand. They went down the attic stairs in a line. Amelia went first, checking every corner. The second-floor corridor was empty. They went to the office and Amelia opened the drawer of Arthur's desk. There it was, a black leather-bound notebook filled with meticulous notes. Amelia flipped through it quickly and felt sick. They were detailed descriptions of the experiments, dates, times, procedures. Emotional synchronicity test, subject A exposed to painful stimulus, while subjects B, C, and D are observed for empathetic reaction. Non-verbal communication test, subjects separated into isolated rooms and instructed to transmit simple information. It was everything she needed. Documented proof, in Arthur's own handwriting, of 2 years of scientific torture. She took the notebook and also some documents from the desk. Then she took quick photos of the office with her phone, including the shelves with books on twins and pseudoscientific experiments. Let's go, she said to the girls. Now for the hardest part. They went down to the ground floor. Amelia went to the main door and tried to open it. Locked. Of course. She tried the control panel next to it. It needed an authorized fingerprint. Damn it, she whispered. She thought quickly. The kitchen door that led to the side garden, she ran there with the girls, behind her. This door was simpler, just a normal lock. She turned it and the door opened. They went out into the garden. The afternoon sun was strong, and the girls blinked, shielding their eyes. It had been so long since they had seen natural light. Stay close to me, Amelia instructed. They ran through the side garden until they reached the main gate. It had an electronic barrier and an intercom. Amelia pressed the exit button, hoping it would work from the inside without authorization. Nothing happened. What do we do? Charlotte asked, panic starting to creep into her. Voice? Amelia looked around desperately. The wall was too high to climb. The gate was solid. They were trapped. That's when she heard it, the sound of an approaching car. Her blood ran cold. It couldn't be Victoria and Arthur back already. Not yet. It was too early. But it was. The black Mercedes appeared on the street and stopped in front of the gate. Through the tinted glass, Amelia could see Victoria at the wheel, her eyes widening as she saw Amelia and the 4 girls on the inside of the gate. The gate began to open automatically, activated, by Victoria from inside the car. Amelia made a split-second decision. Run, she yelled, pushing the girls out as soon as there was enough space. The 4 girls ran through the opening gate, out onto the street. Amelia tried to follow them, but Victoria had already gotten out of the car, running towards them. You! Victoria screamed, her voice filled with fury. You've destroyed everything. Arthur got out of the passenger side, slower, but just as furious. The girls were running down the pavement, but they didn't know where to go. They were disoriented, scared, exposed. Amelia saw a neighbor coming out of a nearby house to get her mail. "Help!" she screamed with all the force of her lungs. "Call the police. These children have been kidnapped. Call now." The neighbor looked confused at the scene, at the four identical girls running, at Victoria and Arthur chasing Amelia, at the chaos that had erupted on the normally quiet street of the Wentworth estate. "Don't listen to her," Victoria shouted. "She's our maid. She's having a breakdown. These are our nieces." But it was too late. Other people were coming out of their houses, drawn by the screams. A security guard from a neighboring estate came running. The girls ran to him, shouting that they needed help, that they had been kidnapped. Amelia used the confusion to run to the girls, placing herself between them and Victoria. "Call the police, now!" she shouted again. "These girls are Charlotte, Chloe, Clara, and Catherine Shaw. They were kidnapped from Bristol 2 years ago. It's in the news. Look it up, and I have proof." She held up the notebook she was still clutching. "I have it all here. Years of illegal experiments, child torture, all documented." Sirens began to wail in the distance. Someone had called the police. Victoria and Arthur realized it was the end. They tried to get back to the car, but the security guard and some neighbors blocked their path. "Don't let them get away," Amelia yelled. "They're criminals. There's an attic in the house where they kept these children chained up." 3 police cars arrived at high speed. Officers jumped out, trying to understand the chaotic situation. Amelia went to the officer who seemed to be in charge. "Sergeant, these 4 girls were kidnapped 2 years ago. They are the Quadruplets who disappeared from Bristol. Charlotte, Chloe, Clara and Catherine Shaw. This couple," she pointed to Victoria and Arthur, "kept them locked in a secret attic in that mansion. They experimented on them. I have all the proof right here." She handed the notebook to the officer. He opened it and flipped through, his face growing more serious with each page. "It's true," said Charlotte, clinging to Amelia's leg. "She saved us. She's good. They're the bad ones." The officer looked at the 4 identical, clearly traumatized girls, then at Victoria and Arthur, then at Amelia. He made his decision. "Arrest these 2 people," he ordered the other officers, pointing to Victoria and Arthur, "on suspicion of kidnapping and false imprisonment, and call an ambulance for these children." Victoria began to scream as she was handcuffed. "You don't understand. Our research is revolutionary. These children are special. We were about to prove the existence of telepathic connections. This would change science forever." "You have the right to remain silent," the officer said, his voice hard. "And I suggest you use it." Amelia fell to her knees, relief flooding her body with such force that her legs could no longer support her. The 4 girls crowded around her, hugging her, crying, laughing, a mixture of emotions exploding after 2 years of nightmare. "You did it," Charlotte whispered. "You really did it." And as the ambulances arrived, as more police appeared, as Victoria and Arthur were led away in handcuffs, Amelia hugged those 4 little girls and finally allowed herself to cry. She cried with relief, exhaustion, and delayed fear. She cried because it had worked. Against all odds, against all the power and influence of that couple, she had saved 4 innocent lives. And at that moment, with the Tuesday sun lighting up her face and 4 little girls clinging to her, Amelia knew that all the struggle, all the fear, all the risk had been worth it. The police station was in an uproar. Amelia sat in an uncomfortable chair in the interview room, a cup of cold coffee in her hand, as she told her story for the 3rd time. The detective in charge, a middle-aged man named Detective Miller, listened intently, making occasional notes. The 4 girls had been taken to the hospital for a full medical examination. Amelia had insisted on going with them, but the police needed her statement immediately while everything was fresh in her memory. "Let me see if I have this right," Detective Miller said, looking at his notes. "You were hired as a live-in housekeeper 3 weeks ago. During that time, you began to suspect something was wrong. You heard crying at night, found evidence of children in the house, and finally managed to communicate with the victims through a locked door." "Exactly. And when Victoria and Arthur Sterling left for a meeting today, I took the opportunity to free them. I knew it might be my only chance. Do you have any idea the risk you took?" The detective looked at her seriously. "These people could have seriously hurt you. They could have made you disappear." "I know. But I couldn't leave those girls there, not after knowing what they were doing to them. Amelia took a sip of the cold coffee and grimaced. Have you read the notebook, seen what they documented? I've read it, and I've already sent a team to search the mansion completely. They found the attic, the chains, everything exactly as you described. They also found medical equipment, video cameras, digital files. It seems they documented every experiment in detail. And the institute? The address on Regent Street? We have teams on their way now. If there's a larger organization behind this, we'll find out. The detective paused. Amelia, you mentioned they threatened you, that they had information about you and your mother. Amelia felt a chill down her spine. Yes, they took pictures of her, knew where she lived, about her health condition. They said if I caused trouble, she would suffer the consequences. We'll arrange protection for your mother immediately. We don't know how many people are involved in this. We have to assume there are others who might try to retaliate. The phone in Amelia's pocket vibrated. It was Mrs. Gable, the neighbor who looked after Eleanor. She answered quickly. Amelia? Are you okay? It's all over the news. They're saying you saved 4 kidnapped children. I'm fine, Mrs. Gable. How's my mother? She saw the news too. She's worried but proud. Very proud, my dear. What you did was heroic. The police are sending someone to protect you, just as a precaution. Let them in, okay? Of course, of course. You're a hero, Amelia, a true hero. Amelia hung up and looked at the detective. Can I go? See the girls now, they must be scared at the hospital. You can go, but we'll need you to remain available. This investigation is just beginning. At the hospital, Amelia found the 4 girls in a private room, being examined by doctors and psychologists. They ran to her as soon as they saw her. You came back, Chloe hugged her legs. I promised I wouldn't abandon you, Amelia said, kneeling to be at their height. How are you? Are the doctors treating you well? Yes, replied Clara. But there are so many questions, and tests, and people. I know it's tiring, but they need to make sure you're okay, and you're going to be okay, I promise. A doctor approached. Are you Amelia Shaw, the woman who rescued them? Yes. Dr. Paula Mendez, pediatrician. I need to speak with you about the girl's condition. She spoke quietly so the children wouldn't hear. Physically, they are surprisingly well. Undernourished, pale, but no signs of severe physical abuse. Psychologically is another story. They will need a lot of support, intensive therapy. The trauma of these 2 years will leave scars. But they will recover? With the right treatment and a lot of love, yes. Children are resilient, and they have each other, which is important. The bond between them is extraordinarily strong. Because of the experiments? Possibly. Or simply because they are quadruplets who went through a shared trauma. It's hard to separate one from the other. The doctor paused. There's another matter. We need to locate their biological mother, Helen Shaw. Do you know anything about her? I know she never gave up looking for them. I saw old news reports. She lives in Bristol. The police are already trying to contact her. She should be here in the next few hours. Amelia stayed with the girls for the rest of the afternoon, talking, answering questions, offering comfort. They wanted to know everything. What would happen now, where they would live, if they would see their real mother again. You're going home, Amelia said with certainty. You'll go back to your mother. You'll have a normal life again. You'll be able to go to school, play in the park, do everything 7-year-old children should do. And you? Asked Charlotte, the most direct of the 4. Will you stay with us? The question squeezed Amelia's heart. I have my own mother to take care of. She's ill and needs me, but I'll visit you whenever I can, I promise. The girls were quiet, processing this. Then Catherine, the shyest, spoke. You saved us. You're our hero. You're the heroes, Amelia replied. You survived something terrible and stayed strong. I just did what any decent person would do. But she knew that wasn't true. Many people would have looked the other way, chosen safety over courage. She had made the difficult choice, and now 4 lives had been saved because of it. Around 7 in the evening there was a commotion in the hallway. Amelia heard a woman's voice, anxious, desperate. My daughters, please, where are my daughters? The 4 girls froze, their eyes wide. "It's her," whispered Charlotte. "It's Mum." The door opened, and a woman ran in. Helen Shaw was in her late 30s, with messy brown hair and wrinkled clothes as if she had rushed from home. Her face was marked by 2 years of suffering, but her eyes shone with desperate hope. "Charlotte? Chloe? Clara? Catherine?" Her voice broke. "Mummy!" The 4 girls shouted in unison and ran to her. Amelia had to look away as Helen fell too, her knees hugging all 4 of her daughters at once, crying, laughing, repeating their names like a prayer. It was a moment so intimate, so full of emotion, that it felt wrong to watch. After long minutes, Helen finally looked up and saw Amelia. She stood up slowly, still holding her daughter's hands. "Are you Amelia?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Yes." Helen walked over to her and, without warning, hugged her tightly. "Thank you. Thank you for giving me back my daughters. Thank you for not giving up on them when it would have been easier. Thank you for being brave when others would have been cowards." Amelia returned the hug, her own tears finally falling. "I couldn't leave them there. They're children. They deserve to be happy, safe, and loved. And now they will be. Because of you." Helen pulled away, wiping her tears. "How can I ever thank you? How can I repay what you've done?" "You don't have to. Just take good care of them. That's all that matters." But Charlotte stepped forward. "Mummy, Amelia's mum is sick too. She took that horrible job to get money for her medicine." Helen looked at Amelia with new understanding. "You were in a desperate situation too." "I was, but it's better now. I managed to pay off the debts, buy the medicine, and my mum is recovering well." "Even so." Helen took Amelia's hands. "You risked everything, even when you needed that money. That's real courage, and I will never forget it." A police officer entered the room. "Sorry to interrupt, but we need Helen Shaw to give a statement." "I'll be right there," Helen replied. She turned to her daughters. "I'm going to stay here at the hospital with you tonight, okay? I'm never leaving your side again." The girls hugged their mother again, and Amelia took the moment to slip out quietly. In the corridor she found Detective Miller waiting. "We have news," he said. The team that went to Regent Street found the institute. It was a front, presented as a spiritual studies center, but it was actually conducting illegal experiments. We found underground facilities, sophisticated medical equipment, and most importantly, files. What kind of files? Documentation of other cases, other children. In total, we've identified 7 missing persons cases that may be linked to this organization, and a list of people involved: businessmen, politicians, even some scientists from respected universities. Amelia felt sick. "It's bigger than we thought. Much bigger. It will take months, maybe years, to dismantle it completely. But you started this. Without your courage, these girls would still be trapped, and this organization would continue to operate with impunity." And Victoria and Arthur? In custody. They're facing multiple charges: kidnapping, false imprisonment, torture, illegal experiments on human beings. They'll spend the rest of their lives in prison if it's up to me. Amelia nodded, satisfied. "Good. And what about the protection for my mother?" "It's already in place. We have officers, watching your flat 24 hours a day. Until we're sure we've caught everyone involved, she will be safe." "Thank you." "No, Amelia, thank you. You've done more for justice in these past 3 weeks than many officers do in their entire careers." The detective extended his hand. "It's an honor to meet you." Amelia shook his hand, still processing everything that had happened. She had started the day as a scared domestic worker, working in a house full of secrets. She was ending it as someone who had saved 4 lives and exposed an international criminal organization. She left the hospital and took a taxi home. She needed to see Eleanor, to hug her, to tell her everything in person. When she arrived at the flat, she found 2 police officers at the door and Mrs. Gable inside, keeping her mother company. "My dear!" Eleanor was sitting on the sofa, visibly stronger than she had been weeks ago. The medicine was working. "I saw everything on the television. I can't believe you did that. I was so worried, but so proud at the same time. Amelia knelt beside the sofa and hugged her mother. I'm sorry I didn't tell you. Sooner? I didn't want to worry you. You were protecting me while saving those children. My brave daughter, my hero. Eleanor stroked Amelia's hair. Your father would be so proud. Wherever he is, he's looking down at you and smiling. Amelia cried in her mother's arms, letting all the tension, all the fear, all the exhaustion of the past few weeks finally pour out. It had been the hardest thing she had ever done, but also the most important. And as Eleanor held her like she did when she was a child, whispering words of comfort and pride, Amelia knew she had changed. She was no longer just a desperate daughter trying to save her mother. She was someone who had looked evil in the eye and chosen to fight. Someone who had put innocent lives above her own safety. She was someone who could look at herself in the mirror and be proud of the person she saw. The following days were a whirlwind. Amelia found herself at the center of a media storm she hadn't expected. Journalists camped outside her building, wanting interviews, wanting her story. She refused most, giving only a short statement to the press. She had done what anyone should do upon discovering children in danger. But the story had captured the nation's imagination. The brave maid who risked everything to save 4 little girls. The headlines called her a hero, an example of courage, an extraordinary woman. Amelia felt uncomfortable with all the attention, but she understood that the visibility helped keep pressure on the authorities to investigate fully. A week after the rescue, Detective Miller invited her to the station again. There were important developments in the investigation. Have a seat, he said when she arrived at his office. Yes, what have you? Discovered? A lot. More than we expected. He opened a thick folder on his desk. The organization Victoria and Arthur were part of is called the Synchronicity Circle. It's been around for over 15 years and operates in several countries: the UK, Spain, France, Germany. How does it work? It's presented as a spiritual research institute, studying paranormal connections between human beings, but in reality, it's a criminal network that kidnaps multiple birth siblings for pseudo-scientific experiments. They believe that identical twins, especially triplets and quadruplets, possess some kind of telepathic link that can be measured and exploited. Amelia felt sick. And how many children? We've identified 11 definitive cases in the last 10 years. The 4 girls you saved, plus 7 other sets of twins. Some have already been found, others we are still looking for. The detective paused, his face heavy. And 3 cases where we couldn't locate the children. They simply disappeared from the organization's records years ago. What happened to them? We don't know, and we probably never will. He closed the folder. But thanks to you, at least 8 sets of children have been or will be saved. The operation was international, coordinated between several countries. In the last 48 hours, we have arrested 23 people connected to the circle. Did Victoria and Arthur cooperate? No. They're denying everything, claiming the children were there voluntarily, that Helen Shaw had consented to the studies. It's ridiculous, but that's their defense. The detective leaned forward. Amelia, there's going to be a trial, and you will be a key witness. I need you to know it will be difficult. They will try to discredit you, say you stole things from the house, that you fabricated evidence, that you had personal motives. I know, and I'm prepared. I have the truth on my side. And I have 4 living girls who can testify to what happened to them. About the girls, the detective smiled for the first time. Helen has found a good lawyer through a children's rights organization. They are in intensive therapy but are recovering well. Helen asked me to give you a message. She wants you to visit when you can. The girls ask about you every day. Amelia's heart warmed. I will. I promise them. There's one more thing. The detective pulled out an envelope. A reward has been offered for the information that led to the girl's recovery. £50,000. It's yours. Amelia stared at the envelope, surprised. £50,000. It was more money than she had ever seen in her life. It would be enough to pay for all of Eleanor's treatment at a private clinic, pay off the flat, maybe even go back to school. I accept, but I want to donate half to Helen and the girls. They'll need resources for therapy, to rebuild their lives. You're a rare person, Amelia Shaw. The detective shook his head in admiration. Most people would have kept it all. I didn't do it for the money. I did it because it was the right thing to do. That afternoon, Amelia went to visit the girls. Helen had rented a small but comfortable house in London, near good hospitals and schools. She was starting her life over in the capital to give her daughters access to the best treatments. When Amelia rang the doorbell, she heard excited shouts from inside. The door opened, and the 4 girls jumped on her at once. "You came! You came!" "I promised I would," Amelia laughed, hugging them all at the same time. "How are you? Show me." "The new house." The girls dragged her inside, all talking at once, showing her their rooms, their new toys, the drawings they had made. They were still very thin, very pale, but there was a light in their eyes that wasn't there before. There was hope. Helen appeared from the kitchen, drying her hands on a cloth. "Amelia, so good to see you. Come in, please. I've made coffee." They sat in the small living room while the girls played in the garden, which they could see through the window. Seeing the 4 of them running freely, laughing, being children, brought tears to Amelia's eyes. "They're so different," she commented. "They're healing, slowly, but they are." Helen took a sip of coffee. "The therapist says the trauma will leave scars, that there will always be triggers, bad memories. But she also says they have incredible resilience, and the fact that they have each other, that they went through it all together, actually makes them stronger." "And you? How are you coping with everything?" "Honestly, some days are very hard. I wake up at night and go check if they're still there, if it wasn't all a dream. I get angry, thinking about everything we lost, all the moments that were stolen, the first days of school we didn't have, the birthdays we didn't celebrate together." Helen wiped away a tear. "But then I remember I have them back, and that's a miracle you made happen. I just did what needed to be done." "No, you did much more. You looked at an impossible situation and chose the side of the children, even when it meant losing everything. Most people wouldn't have that courage." Charlotte ran in. "Amelia, are you staying for dinner? Mum's making lasagna." "I'd love to." Dinner was chaotic and noisy, exactly as it should be with 4 7-year-old girls. They all talked at once, told stories, made jokes. It was hard to believe that just a week ago they were chained in a dark attic. After dinner, while Helen was putting the girls to bed, Amelia stood in the living room looking at photos on the wall. Helen had started to rebuild her archive of memories, photos of the girls as babies, their first birthday parties, the first day of school before the kidnapping, and new photos too from the last few days showing 4 smiling girls, free, safe. "I'm going to make sure to document every moment from now on," Helen said, returning to the room. "I'm not losing anything else. They're lucky to have you. We're lucky to have you." Helen sat next to Amelia. "You know, there's something I want to ask you, and you can say no, okay? But the girls and I have talked, and we'd like you to be part of our lives. Not as a stranger who visits occasionally, but as family. Like an aunt, maybe. Someone they can always count on." Amelia felt emotion tighten her throat. I'd love to. But I have my mother, she's sick, I need to take care of her. And you can continue to care for her. I'm not asking you to change your life, just to make room in it for 4 little girls who love and admire you more than you can imagine. Then yes, I want to be part of your lives." The 2 women hugged, 2 mothers in different situations, but united by their love for children who needed protecting. When Amelia finally left, it was late. In the taxi back home, she looked out the window at the city lights and reflected on how her life had changed in a month. She had started out desperate, with no options, willing to take any job to save her mother. And now she had an extended family, a purpose, and the satisfaction of knowing she had made a real difference in the world. Her phone rang. It was an unknown number. Hesitantly she answered. "Amelia Shaw?" "Yes. Who's speaking?" "My name is Dr. Robert Anderson. I'm a professor of social work at the University of London. I read about what you did, about your courage and your commitment to protecting vulnerable children. I'd like to offer you a full scholarship to study with us. I believe you have exactly the kind of passion and dedication we need in this field." Amelia was speechless for a moment. A scholarship, a chance to study, to get a degree, to turn this experience into a career helping other children. I haven't even finished my A-levels yet. We can work with that. We have programs for adults who want to complete their education. If you're interested, we can discuss the options further. Yes, I'm very interested. Excellent. I'll send you information by email. And Amelia, what you did was extraordinary. People like you make this world a better place. After hanging up, Amelia stared at her phone, hardly believing what had just happened. An education, a career, a chance to help other children, to be professionally what she had been instinctively for Charlotte, Chloe, Clara, and Catherine. When she got home, she found Eleanor awake and waiting. "Mum, what are you still doing up?" "I was waiting for you. Sit here with me." Eleanor patted the sofa beside her. "I want to tell you something. I went to the doctor today. Mrs. Gable took me." Amelia's heart raced. "And?" "The tumor is shrinking. The medicines are working better than we expected. The doctor said I have a real chance of a full recovery." Amelia hugged her mother, crying with relief. Everything she had fought for, all the fear, all the danger, was paying off. Eleanor was going to be okay. The girls were safe, and she had a future ahead of her. "See?" Eleanor said, pulling back to look into her daughter's eyes. "Sometimes when we do the right thing, even when it's hard, things work out. You saved those girls, and in a way you saved us both too. The money you got, yes, but more than that, you gave me something to live for. You showed me there's still goodness in the world, that there are still people who choose to do the right thing." "I learned from the best." Amelia kissed her mother's forehead. "You always taught me to stand up for what's right, no matter the cost. And you listened, my brave girl." That night, for the first time in months, Amelia slept deeply, without nightmares, without anxiety. She slept knowing she had changed, lives that she had made a difference, that she had looked evil in the eye and won. And in her dreams, she saw 4 little girls running free in a sunny park, laughing, playing, being exactly what they should be, happy, safe children with a future full of possibilities ahead of them. 6 months had passed since the rescue. Amelia's life had changed in ways she could never have imagined that March morning when she saw the job ad for the Wentworth estate. She had completed her secondary education through an accelerated program and started her social work studies at university. Eleanor was in remission, stronger every day, helping to look after the quadruplets when Helen needed to work. The 6 of them had formed an improvised but deeply connected family. But today was the day Amelia had been both dreading and waiting for. The trial of Victoria and Arthur Sterling was about to begin. Amelia arrived at the courthouse early, dressed in a simple suit that Helen had helped her choose. Reporters crowded the steps of the building, cameras pointed at everyone who arrived. When they saw her, there was a burst of flashes and shouted questions. "Amelia, how do you feel about the trial? Are you afraid to testify? The defense claims you fabricated evidence. What do you have to say?" Amelia kept her head down and entered quickly, guided by the police officers escorting her. Inside, Detective Miller was waiting. "Ready?" he asked. "As ready as I'll ever be." "The prosecution's case is strong. We have physical evidence, detailed documentation, multiple witnesses, but the defense will try to destabilize you. They'll question your motives, your credibility, everything." "I know, but I'm prepared." The courtroom was packed when they entered. Amelia saw Helen sitting in the front rows, accompanied by parents of other children who had been victims of the synchronicity circle. All the families gathered together, seeking justice. Victoria and Arthur were brought in, handcuffed. Amelia saw them for the first time since that chaotic day on the street. They seemed smaller somehow, less intimidating. Victoria still had that cold gaze, but there was something broken there too. Arthur stared fixedly at the table, avoiding everyone's eyes. The judge entered, and the trial began. The prosecutor, a determined woman named Diane Evans, presented her case meticulously. She showed photos of the attic, the chains, the medical equipment. She read excerpts from Arthur's notebook, her voice firm as she described experiments that made people in the audience whisper in horror. Then it was time for the witnesses. First, the doctor who had examined the girls, describing signs of prolonged confinement, mild malnutrition, and severe psychological trauma. Then, police officers who had participated in the raid on the institute describing what they found in the underground facilities. Finally, they called Amelia. She walked to the front, was sworn in and sat in the witness box. She could feel all eyes on her, especially the icy stare of Victoria. The prosecutor began with basic questions: how Amelia had gotten the job, what she had noticed in the first few days when she began to suspect something was wrong. Amelia answered calmly, detailing every moment: the nightly sounds, the locked doors, the books about twins, the mysterious business card, the argument she had overheard between the couple. "And when did you first make direct contact with the victims?" the prosecutor asked. "On the 5th night after I started. I clearly heard crying coming from the 2nd floor. I went up and spoke to them through the locked door. They told me their names, that they were quadruplets, that they had been kidnapped from Bristol. What did the defendants do when they discovered you knew?" "They threatened me. They said they had information about my sick mother, that they knew where she lived. They showed me photos they had taken of her. They said if I caused trouble, she would suffer the consequences. Mrs. Sterling hit me in the face when I insisted there were children trapped in the attic." Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. The defense lawyer stood up. "Objection. The witness cannot prove she was assaulted. There are no photos or medical reports." "Sustained," the judge said. "The witness will stick to the facts she can substantiate." The prosecutor continued. "You decided to act even under threat. Why?" "Because they were children. Innocent children being subjected to cruel experiments. I couldn't just ignore it. Even if it cost me everything, I couldn't abandon them." "Describe what happened on the day of the rescue." Amelia recounted it in detail, how she had temporarily disabled the cameras, figured out the door code, gone up to the attic, found the girls in chains and freed each of them, how she had taken the experiment logbook as evidence. "And when the defendants returned unexpectedly, what happened? We tried to escape. The girls managed to get out through the gate, but Mrs. and Mr. Sterling intercepted us. I screamed for help, asked neighbors to call the police. That's when everything came out." The prosecutor sat down. No further questions. The defense lawyer rose. He was a man in an expensive suit with a stern expression. "Miss Shaw, you were in a desperate financial situation when you accepted this job, correct?" "Yes." "Your mother was gravely ill. You were facing eviction. You desperately needed money." "Yes." "And when you entered that house, you saw wealth. Expensive objects, works of art, sophisticated electronics. It must have been tempting." Amelia frowned. "I don't understand the question." "The question is, did you see an opportunity? A chance to extort money from wealthy people by fabricating a sensational story?" "Objection!" The prosecutor was on her feet. "Speculation and character assassination." "Sustained. Counsel, rephrase, or move on." The lawyer changed tactics. "You claim to hear children crying, but when my clients returned home that night, you were acting normally. Why didn't you call the police immediately if you truly believed children?" "Joe are in danger?" "Because they threatened me. They showed me they knew where my mother lived. I was afraid of what they would do to her." "Or perhaps because you were still planning how to maximize this situation for your financial benefit." "No." Amelia's voice came out louder than she intended. "I never wanted money from them. I just wanted to save those girls." "But you did accept a reward afterward, didn't you? £50,000. "Yes, and I donated half of it to Helen Shaw and her daughters. I used the rest for my mother's treatment and for my education." "Convenient." The lawyer walked in front of the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen, this woman wants you to believe she stumbled upon an international kidnapping ring, that she heroically saved 4 children while risking her own life. But I suggest an alternative narrative. A woman desperate for money saw an opportunity. She fabricated evidence, manipulated vulnerable children, and created a sensational story that made her a celebrity and earned her a fortune." "That's not true." Amelia was shaking with anger now. "I saw those girls. I saw the chains, the attic, the experiment logbook. It's all documented. Documented by you, the only person with unsupervised access to the house that day. How do we know you didn't plant evidence? How do we know the famous notebook wasn't tampered with? The prosecutor stood up again. Objection. The evidence was analyzed by independent experts. The documents are authentic. The defense questions the chain of custody of this evidence. The judge sighed. That was established in the pre-trial phase. The evidence was properly preserved and analyzed. Move on, counsel. Frustrated, the defense lawyer tried a few more attacks on Amelia's credibility, but she held firm. She answered every question calmly, refusing to be intimidated. Finally, he gave up. No further questions. Amelia stepped down from the witness box, her legs trembling. Helen hugged her when she returned to her seat. "You were incredible," she whispered, "strong and truthful." The following days brought more witnesses. Parents of other child victims of the circle, telling similar stories of disappearances, years of desperate searching, and traumatic recovery. Each story was a punch to the gut, a reminder of how much harm had been done. Then came the co-conspirators, who had made deals with the prosecution in exchange for reduced sentences. The doctor who regularly visited the mansion, a disgraced psychiatrist obsessed with theories about collective consciousness, businessmen who financed the operation, hoping to commercially exploit any discovery about telecommunication, politicians who used their connections to shield the organization from investigation. The scale of the conspiracy was shocking. Dozens of people involved, operating for over a decade, destroying families in pursuit of validation for pseudoscientific theories. Finally, it was time for the defendants to testify in their own defense. Arthur went up first. In a monotone voice, he described his motivations as scientific. He claimed he was conducting legitimate research, that the children were never mistreated, that the parents had given consent, an obvious lie quickly refuted by the prosecutor. "We were on the verge of a revolutionary discovery," he insisted. "Proving the existence of telepathic connections between identical twins would change our understanding of human consciousness. The ends justified the means." "Even if those means involved kidnapping children?" the prosecutor asked acidly. "They weren't kidnappings. They were recruitments for an important study." The jury was not convinced. Their faces showed clear revulsion. Victoria was even worse. She maintained her cold arrogance even in the face of overwhelming evidence. She claimed Amelia had manipulated everything, that the children were there voluntarily, that the entire investigation was a conspiracy against her pioneering work. "You don't understand," she told the jury. "We were so close. A few more months, and we would have had irrefutable proof that twins can communicate telepathically. It would have revolutionized science, medicine, everything. And this ignorant maid destroyed years of work." It was the worst move she could have made. Even the jury members who might have had some residual sympathy turned against her at that moment. The closing arguments were powerful. The prosecutor painted a clear picture. Two fanatics obsessed with a discredited theory, willing to destroy children's lives to validate their delusional beliefs. The defense tried to argue that there were nuances, that the intentions were pure even if the methods were questionable. The jury deliberated for only 4 hours. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous on all counts. Guilty of kidnapping, guilty of false imprisonment, guilty of torture, guilty of illegal experiments on human beings. Victoria remained impassive as the verdict was read. Arthur broke down, crying for the first time. The sentence was severe, 25 years in prison for each, with no possibility of parole before 15 years served. When the judge's gavel fell, sealing the defendant's fate, applause erupted in the courtroom. The judge didn't try to silence them. He let the families have their moment of justice. Amelia hugged Helen, both crying with relief. It was finally real. Victoria and Arthur would pay for their crimes. The girls would have justice. Outside the courthouse, a crowd was waiting. When Amelia left with Helen and the other parents, they were greeted with applause and shouts of support. A reporter managed to get close with a microphone. "Amelia, how do you feel now that justice has been served?" Amelia paused, thinking carefully about her words. "I feel relieved, but also sad. Sad because it took so long for these children to get justice. Sad for all the families that were destroyed by this organization. My hope is that this trial sends a clear message. No matter how powerful you are, no matter how many connections you have, if you hurt children, there will be consequences. What would you say to other people who witness injustice but are afraid to act? I would say, I understand the fear. Believe me, I was terrified, but some things are too important to ignore. Vulnerable children need brave adults to protect them, and sometimes doing the right thing means risking everything. But it's worth it. It's always worth it. More questions were shouted, but police officers led them to waiting cars. Amelia looked back one last time at the courthouse where Victoria and Arthur were being taken to prison. It was really the end. The nightmare was over, and a new beginning was just starting. 2 years passed since the trial. Life had found a new rhythm, a new normality that Amelia would never have thought possible in those dark days in the Wentworth estate. Amelia was in her 3rd year of her social work degree, maintaining excellent grades while working part-time at a non-governmental organization dedicated to protecting vulnerable children. Eleanor was in complete remission, healthier than she had been in years, volunteering at a local shelter. The Quadruplets, now 9 years old, were flourishing. They still had weekly therapy, still had occasional nightmares, but they were happy, curious children, full of life. Charlotte wanted to be a lawyer when she grew up. Chloe loved to draw and painted constantly. Clara had a talent for music and was learning the piano. Catherine, the shyest, had revealed herself to be a voracious reader, always with a book in her hands. It was a Saturday afternoon, and Amelia was at Helen's house helping to prepare for a birthday party. The girls would be turning 9 the next day and had invited half their school. "Do you think 30 cupcakes are enough?" Helen asked, taking another batch out of the oven. "For 9-year-olds, better make it 40, Amelia laughed. "They eat more than we think." Eleanor was in the living room decorating, hanging balloons and colourful banners. The Quadruplets were running around, helping, or, more accurately, getting in the way adorably. "Aunt Amelia," Chloe ran up to her, "you're staying for the party tomorrow, right?" "Of course I am. I wouldn't miss it for the world. And Grandma Eleanor too?" "Her too. We're part of the family, remember?" Chloe hugged her legs. The best family. Amelia's phone rang. It was Detective Miller, who had become a friend over the last couple of years. "Amelia, I have news, good and bad." "Go on." "The good news is, we've closed the last case linked to the Synchronicity Circle. We found the last 3 sets of missing twins, alive, thank God. They were being held in a facility in Chile. That's wonderful. The bad news is we discovered something about the 3 cases where we couldn't locate the children. We found documents buried in the Institute's archives. The children, they didn't survive the experiments. It was years ago, but still." Amelia sat down, feeling sick. "Oh my God." "I know, it's horrible. But at least now the families can have closure. They can have proper funerals. They can start to process the loss." He paused. "You saved lives, Amelia. If you hadn't acted when you did, Charlotte, Chloe, Clara, and Catherine could have met the same fate. I can't think about that. It's too awful. I understand. But I want you to know that the impact of what you did continues to expand. Because of your courage, we've changed how we investigate missing children cases. We've trained officers to recognize signs of criminal organizations disguised as legitimate institutions. You changed the system." After hanging up, Amelia sat for a moment, processing. 9 sets of children saved in total, but 3 lost forever. The joy of victory mixed with sadness for the lives that couldn't be saved. Helen came into the room and sat beside her. "Bad news," Amelia told her about the 3 children. Helen took her hand. "You can't save everyone," she said softly. "But you saved my girls. You saved 8 other sets of children. You dismantled an organization that had been operating for decades. That's no small thing, Amelia. I know, it's just, I wish I had found out sooner. I wish I could have saved them all. And it's exactly that compassion, that desire to protect all children, that makes you such a special person. And that will make you an incredible social worker." That night after the decorations were up and the cupcakes were made, Amelia went home with Eleanor. Her small flat was very different now. There were pictures on the walls, books on the shelves. a feeling of home that hadn't existed before. "Mum," Amelia said as they made tea, "do you ever think about how much our lives have changed?" "Every day," Eleanor smiled. 2.5 years ago, we were on the brink of an abyss. Eviction, illness, debt. And now we have everything. Health, security, purpose, and an extended family that we love. I still have nightmares about that house sometimes, about that attic. I know, dear, trauma doesn't disappear completely, but you turned something horrible into something beautiful. You took the worst experience of your life and used it to create positive change in the world. I learned from you. You never gave up, even when things seemed impossible. And you never gave up on those girls. We're fighters, the two of us." On Sunday, the birthday party was a joyous chaos. 30 children running, screaming, playing games, eating cupcakes with too much icing. The quadruplets were radiant, surrounded by friends, completely normal, completely happy. Amelia watched it all from a corner, her heart full. It was hard to remember that these same girls had spent 2 years of their young lives chained in a dark attic. They had survived, recovered, thrived. "A penny for your thoughts," said a voice behind her. Amelia turned to see Professor Robert Anderson, who had become her mentor at university. He had been invited to the party as a family friend. "I was just thinking about how much we've all changed. You've built something beautiful here. A chosen family united not by blood but by love and shared experience." He looked at the girls. "You know, I'm coordinating a new program at the university, focused on training social workers who specialize in childhood trauma. I'd like you to join the program next semester." "Me? But I'm still in my 3rd year. And you have more practical experience than master's students. You understand trauma in a way that can't be taught in a classroom. Your perspective would be invaluable." "I'd love to." "Excellent. And Amelia, there's something else. A publisher contacted me. They want to publish a book about the Synchronicity Circle case, your story from the inside. Would you be interested in co-writing?" Amelia hesitated. "I don't know. I don't want to exploit the girl's trauma. I understand. But think about it. A book could educate people, train professionals, inspire other victims to speak out. It could be a powerful tool for change. I'll think about it. I'll talk to Helen and the girls." That evening, after all the guests had gone and the house was finally quiet, Amelia helped Helen put the girls to bed. They were exhausted but happy, still chattering excitedly about the party. "It was the best birthday ever," said Clara, yawning. "Better. Other than the one when we turned 5, asked Charlotte. "Before—" She didn't finish the sentence, but they all knew what she meant. "Before the kidnapping. Before the nightmare." "Yes," said Catherine firmly, "because now we have more family. We have Aunt Amelia and Grandma Eleanor." "And because we're free," added Chloe. "And safe." Amelia kissed each of them on the forehead. "You will always be safe. I promise." Later, in the kitchen, as Amelia and Helen cleaned the last of the dishes, Helen brought up a delicate subject. "The girls have started asking questions about what happened. Real questions, not just fragments. They want to understand why they were taken, what those people wanted, why they were chosen. What have you been telling them? The truth, adapted for their age. That some bad people took them to do tests, but that you saved them, and now they're safe. But they want more details now. They're getting older, more aware. Maybe it's time to have that full conversation, obviously without the most traumatic details, but an honest version of what happened. Would you be part of it? They trust you completely. Your word means everything to them. Of course, whenever you think they're ready." A week later, they had the conversation. Sitting in the living room, the 6 of them, Amelia and Helen, told the full story. How Victoria and Arthur were part of an organization that believed in false theories about twins. How they took them because they were quadruplets, special in their sameness. How they kept them for 2 years doing tests. The girls listened in silence, processing. Then they asked questions, lots of questions. Amelia and Helen answered with honesty but gently. "Why did you help us?" Charlotte finally asked. "You didn't know us, and they threatened you. Why did you risk so much?" Amelia thought carefully before answering. "Because you were children who needed help, and I had the power to do something. To do nothing would have been morally wrong." Sometimes in life you have to choose between what is easy and what is right. And I chose what was right. But you could have been hurt. Your mum could have been hurt. I could have. And I was terrified. But fear can't stop us from doing what we know is right. If everyone lets fear paralyze them, then evil wins. Chloe stood up and hugged Amelia. Soon the other three followed. The five of them stayed like that for a long moment, a collective hug that represented everything they had survived together, everything they had built. When I grow up, Chloe said finally, I want to be like you. I want to help children too. Me too, the other three agreed. Amelia felt tears in her eyes. You are already incredible. You survived something that would have destroyed many people. You are strong, brave, kind. You can be whatever you want to be. That night, alone in her flat, Amelia thought about the book proposal. Maybe it was important to document everything. Not to glorify her, but to educate, to inspire, to show that ordinary people can make extraordinary differences. She took out her laptop and began to write. My name is Amelia Shaw. I am 29 years old. And this is the story of how 4 little girls changed my life and how together we changed the world. The words flowed, page after page, the story unfolding, the initial desperation, the gradual discovery, the fear, the courage, the rescue. But also the recovery, the healing, the family they had built from the ashes of trauma. The following months were intense. Amelia divided her time between her studies, her work at the NGO, visiting the girls, and writing the book. Many nights she stayed up late, revisiting painful memories, putting into words experiences that sometimes seemed impossible to describe. Helen helped her, filling in gaps, adding the perspective of a mother who had lost and recovered her daughters. The girls themselves contributed as much as they felt comfortable, sharing their memories of captivity and recovery. It was therapy and documentation at the same time. The process of writing the book brought up emotions Amelia had buried. There were nights she cried alone in her room, remembering the fear she felt in that mansion, the helplessness of hearing the girls through the door without being able to help them immediately, the terror when Victoria and Arthur confronted her. But it also brought healing. By putting everything into words, by seeing the complete journey from beginning to end, Amelia was able to process the trauma in a way she hadn't been able to before. She saw her own strength, her courage, her determination more clearly. And she saw how one decision, one moment of choosing to do what was right despite all the reasons not to, had set off a wave of positive change. Eleanor was a constant reader of the drafts. She would sit with Amelia many nights, reading chapters, offering feedback, sharing her own memories of that terrible time when she didn't know where her daughter was or what she was facing. Do you know what makes me proudest? Eleanor said one night, closing the manuscript after reading the chapter about the rescue. It's not that you saved those girls, although that is extraordinary. It's that you never lost your humanity in the process. You could have become hard, cynical, distrustful, but you remained kind, compassionate, able to love and be loved. I learned that from you, Mum. Perhaps, but you chose to keep it even when it would have been easier to close your heart. Writing the book took 8 months. When it was finally complete, Amelia looked at the 300 pages and felt a mixture of pride and exhaustion. It was her story, and Helen's, and the girls'. It was a testament to survival, to courage, to love being stronger than fear. The publisher loved it. They made only minor edits, keeping Amelia's authentic voice. When the book was published, the response was beyond all expectations. Positive reviews from all sides, interviews on television and radio programs, invitations to speak at schools, universities, and conferences on child protection. Amelia found herself in a position she never imagined, a public voice on childhood trauma and recovery. It was strange and sometimes uncomfortable, but also gratifying. Every time someone approached her to say that the book had inspired them to report abuse, or to ask for help, or not to give up on a child who needed protection, Amelia knew it had been worth reopening old wounds. The girls, now 9, were proud. They took copies of the book to school, showed it to friends, asked Amelia to sign copies for teachers who had been especially supportive. They had become ambassadors in a way, speaking openly about their experience when they felt comfortable, helping other children understand that survivors of trauma could have normal, happy lives. The impact of the book was greater than expected. Schools began using it in child safety education programs. Social service organizations included it in their training. The police cited it in workshops on recognizing disguised criminal networks. And the messages. Amelia received dozens every day, from parents thanking her for giving a voice to their pain, from survivors sharing their own stories, from professionals saying the book had changed their approach to their work. Each message was a reminder of why it had been important to document everything. But perhaps the most significant response came from a network of families of missing children. They created a support group called Amelia's Hope, dedicated to never giving up the search for lost children and supporting each other through the agonizing process of searching and waiting. Helen became one of the group's leaders, using her experience to guide other mothers and fathers through the legal and emotional labyrinth of having a missing child. Seeing Helen transform her pain into purpose, helping others going through the same nightmare she had endured, was inspiring. It was a story of survival, of courage, of choosing to do the right thing even when everything was against you. It was a story that deserved to be told. 5 years had passed since that Tuesday afternoon when Amelia freed 4 little girls from an attic in the Wentworth estate. 5 years that felt like both a lifetime and the blink of an eye. Amelia was sitting in her new office, a small but cozy room in a non-governmental organization specializing in child protection. Having graduated a year ago with honors in social work, she now coordinated an innovative program that trained social workers to recognize signs of abuse and disguised criminal organizations. Her book, From Silence to Freedom, The Story of the Wentworth Quadruplets, had been published 6 months earlier and had become an unexpected bestseller. All proceeds were donated to organizations supporting child victims of trauma. The book was being used in universities, in police training, in awareness programs. Eleanor, now 57, was fully recovered. She worked part-time at the same NGO as Amelia, using her own experience with illness to help families facing medical crises while dealing with child protection issues. The Quadruplets, now 12, were vibrant pre-teens. Charlotte was on the school's student council, always advocating for social justice. Chloe had had her drawings exhibited in a local gallery. Clara played the piano in regular recitals. Catherine had started writing poetry and short stories, some surprisingly mature for her age. They still had therapy, but less frequently now. Nightmares were rare. Triggers were more manageable. They were healing, truly healing. Helen had become an advocate for families of missing children, using her experience to help other parents navigate the legal and support systems. She and Amelia were like sisters now, bound by an experience no one else could truly understand. It was a Friday afternoon, and Amelia was reviewing proposals for a new program when her phone rang. It was Charlotte. "Aunt Amelia, can you come home now?" "What happened? Is everything okay?" "Yes, better than okay. Just come, please." Curious and slightly worried, Amelia gathered her things and left. When she arrived at Helen's house, she found them all waiting in the living room with huge smiles. "What's going on?" Charlotte handed her an envelope. "Read it." Amelia opened it. It was a letter from the London Assembly. Her hands trembled as she read. "Dear Ms. Amelia Shaw, it is with great pleasure that we inform you that you have been chosen to receive the Medal of Honor for Citizen Merit, in recognition of your extraordinary courage and contributions to child protection in the Greater London area. The ceremony will be held next month." Tears filled her eyes. I don't know what to say." "Say you'll accept." Chloe jumped excitedly. "And that we'll all be there to watch," added Clara. "You deserve this, and so much more," Helen said, hugging her. "You've changed so many lives, Amelia. Not just ours, but hundreds through your work." "Thousands," corrected Catherine. "Your book has reached thousands of people. How many children have been saved because someone read your story and learned to recognize the signs of danger?" Amelia hugged them all, laughing and crying at the same time. It was surreal to think that the desperate 28-year-old girl taking a suspicious job to save her mother had become this, a recognized activist, an author, a voice for vulnerable children. The ceremony was grand. The assembly hall was packed with politicians, activists, journalists, and families. Amelia went up on stage wearing a simple but elegant dress, with Eleanor, Helen, and the Quadruplets in the front row. The official who presented the award told her story with emotional detail: the discovery, the rescue, the trial, the lasting impact. When he finally placed the medal around her neck, the hall erupted in applause that lasted a full 5 minutes. Amelia approached the microphone, her heart racing. "Thank you. Thank you for this honor, which I don't feel I deserve, but I accept on behalf of all the children who cannot speak for themselves." She paused, looking at the faces in the crowd. 5 years ago, I was in a desperate situation. My mother was dying. We were facing eviction. I saw no way out. I took a job that seemed too good to be true because I had no choice. And I discovered that some things really are too good to be true. Nervous laughter rippled through the audience. But in that place of darkness, I found something. That changed everything. I found 4 little girls who needed help, and I had to make a choice. I could ignore it, keep my head down, protect myself and my mother, or I could risk everything to do what was right. Amelia looked directly at the Quadruplets. I chose to risk it, and it was the best decision I ever made, not because it brought me recognition or awards, but because those 4 girls deserved a chance. They deserved freedom, safety, love. They deserved a childhood. Her voice grew stronger. There are thousands of children in the UK right now who are in danger. In abusive homes, in situations of exploitation, in criminal organizations disguised as legitimate ones. They need brave adults to protect them. They need us to pay attention, to ask difficult questions, to act even when it's frightening. I am not special. I am not a hero. I am just someone who saw something wrong and decided not to look the other way. And if I can do it, anyone can. This medal is not mine. It belongs to all the people who choose to protect children every day. Teachers who report signs of abuse. Neighbors who call the authorities when something seems wrong. Social workers who fight tirelessly for vulnerable children. Families who take in traumatized children and love them back to life. Amelia held the medal. I dedicate this award to my mother, Eleanor Shaw, who taught me never to give up, to Helen Shaw, who never stopped searching for her daughters, and most of all to Charlotte, Chloe, Clara, and Catherine, 4 incredibly brave girls who survived the unimaginable and have become inspiring young women. You are my true heroes. The applause was deafening. The Quadruplets were crying, as were Eleanor and Helen. But they were tears of joy, of pride, of love. After the ceremony, there was a reception. Amelia was approached by dozens of people, parents of children rescued in other cases, thanking her for starting the investigation that freed them, young social workers saying she was their inspiration, trauma survivors sharing their own stories of recovery. But the most significant moment came when a young woman of about 17 approached her shyly. "Miss Shaw, my name is Sarah. I read your book 3 months ago, and it gave me the courage to tell someone about what my stepfather was doing. I was so scared, but your book showed me that speaking out was the only option. I got help. I was removed from that house, and now I'm safe." Amelia hugged the girl, tears streaming down her face. "You are so brave, so incredibly brave." "No," Sarah pulled away, wiping her own tears. "You showed me the way. You gave me courage. Thank you for sharing your story. It saved my life." When the evening ended and everyone had gone home, Amelia lay awake for a long time, reflecting. She thought about all the turns her life had taken, how desperation had turned into purpose, how trauma had turned into strength, how an impossible choice had become the best decision of her life. Her mind went back to that Tuesday, 5 years ago. The fear she felt climbing that staircase to the attic. The certainty that she was doing the right thing even though she knew it could cost her everything. The moment she saw 4 identical girls in chains and knew she couldn't abandon them. If she could go back, knowing all the pain, all the fear, all the sleepless nights that would follow, she would do it all, again without hesitation. Because Charlotte, Chloe, Clara, and Catherine were alive, free, and happy. Because other children had been saved. Because change had happened. A year later, Amelia stood at another ceremony, this one different. It was the Quadruplets' primary school graduation. 13 years old now, ready to enter secondary school, they were radiant in their graduation gowns. When Charlotte was called to give the valedictory speech as the class representative, Amelia felt pride swell in her chest. "My fellow classmates," Charlotte began, her voice clear and strong, "today we celebrate an ending, but we also celebrate new beginnings. We have learned a lot in these years, maths, science, history, but the most important lesson I learned came from outside the classroom." She looked directly at Amelia. "I learned that courage is not the absence of fear. It is doing what is right despite the fear. I learned that one person can make a difference. One brave person can change lives, can change the world. My sisters and I know something about that. We know about darkness, about fear, about feeling helpless. But we also know about light, about hope, about the courage of one woman who saved us when she had no reason to risk so much. And now as we go forward, we carry that lesson with us. We will be those brave people. We will make a difference. We will protect those who need protection and stand up for those who cannot stand up for themselves." The applause filled the auditorium. Amelia was crying openly now, as was Eleanor beside her and Helen on the other side. After the ceremony, the 6 of them gathered for photos, the improvised family that had been formed from tragedy and triumph. Amelia in the center, surrounded by the quadruplets with Eleanor and Helen on either side. "You know," said Chloe, adjusting her graduation tassel, "I was thinking, our story needs to have a happy ending on record for when we tell our children one day." "And what would that happy ending be?" Amelia asked. The 4 girls looked at each other and smiled. Then they spoke in unison, as they often did. "And they all lived happily ever after." And really, Amelia thought as she hugged them all, it was true. Not in the fairy tale sense where everything is perfect, but in the real sense where imperfect people make brave choices and build meaningful lives from the ashes of trauma, where love and family are chosen, not just given, where surviving turns into thriving. Charlotte, Chloe, Clara, and Catherine had survived. More than that, they were thriving. They were strong, intelligent, compassionate young women. They would take the lessons of their experience and use them to make the world a better place. And Amelia, the desperate maid who had risked everything for 4 children she didn't know, had found her true calling. Not as a hero on a pedestal, but as a defender, a voice, a constant reminder that ordinary people can do extraordinary things. As the sun set over London on that graduation evening, casting golden hues over the gathered family, Amelia knew with absolute certainty every moment of fear, every difficult choice, every risk had been worth it. Because some things are more important than personal safety, some things are worth any risk, and 4 innocent girls, now bright young women with infinite futures ahead of them, were definitely worth everything. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Amelia, Charlotte, Chloe, Clara, and Catherine has touched your hearts deeply. This is a story about ordinary courage achieving extraordinary feats, about never giving up even when all seems lost, and about the transformative power of choosing to do what is right. To continue this emotional journey with us, we have prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories that explore the strength of the human spirit. Find it by clicking on the left. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave a like on the video. Every day we bring unique narratives that celebrate the resilience, compassion, and courage of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Your life stories, your moments of courage, your examples of kindness are what make this world better. Share in the comments if you've ever been in situations where you had to choose between safety and doing what was right. We would love to read your experiences. Until the next story, and remember, you too can be the brave person who changes everything for someone in need.